Chapter 541, Controlling Lightning. Ranmaru asked, "Why did you stop?" Fujin pulled his hand back and said, "Your words intrigued me. You said that you had found the meaning of your life." "What did you find?" Ranmaru replied. "It's as I said. I completed Rhaega and Rhaega completed me. That was the meaning of our lives. We are two people who have different bodies but the same mind." "Heh heh, ha 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 ha." Fujin broke out in a burst of loud laughter. Ranmaru didn't understand the meaning of the laughter but didn't say anything. After half a minute, Fujin finally controlled himself and said, "That's the most delusional thing I have heard in my life." He looked into Ranmaru's eyes and continued, "I don't know what the two of you have been doing before you reached this village, but here, all you did was enslave the villagers and force them to work for you. In addition, you buried several defenseless villagers alive, villagers who were no different from cripples in Rhaega's eyes, is the meaning you found in your life." "Ha ha ha, that's the most bizarre thing I have heard." Ranmaru replied, "We came here to free people from the tyrannical taxes that were imposed on them." Fujin laughed again and said, "Oh really? Of all the places, you came to rescue the village that has a gold mine. Do you think that making them work like a slave and burying them alive is helping them?" "Ha ha ha, you are one sadistic bastard." Fujin's words surprised Ranmaru. It was important to remember that Ranmaru was just a child. He stayed in his house all the time since he couldn't walk outside, and once Rhaega took him away, he always stayed with Rhaega. As a result, his sense of morality wasn't normal in any sense. Hearing Fujin's words, Ranmaru began introspecting. Fujin touched Ranmaru's forehead once again with 2 fingers and said, "I have changed my mind. I won't kill you. However, I will make you experience how life is for a person without any abilities. From this day onwards, you won't be able to use your dojutsu. Only when you have helped 100 times the people you and Rhaega harmed, you will be able to use your abilities again. He, enjoy your new life. Perhaps you might find the real meaning of your life." As those words fell on Ranmaru's ears, he fell unconscious. However, even when he was unconscious, he kept hearing those words. It was as if those words were imprinted on his brain. Fujin picked Ranmaru up and flickered back to the graveyard. He placed his unconscious body there and disappeared once again. Seconds later, the soil covering one of the graves suddenly shifted apart. The coffin lid cracked and crumbled, and the restraints tying the person inside the coffin were cut apart by the wind. The man opened his eyes. His fists and legs were bleeding as he had tried for over an hour to break out of the coffin. He had given up, but as soon as he saw the light, he pulled at his restraints with as much force as he could. To his surprise, he managed to break free. He quickly crawled out of the coffin and took heavy breaths. He looked around fearfully to see if Rhaega and his men were still around. To his relief, he didn't see anyone. And to his horror, he noticed a lot of blood. He got up and nervously checked the bodies that were lying around in the graveyard. His eyes widened as he realized that they were the dead bodies of the Kurasuke family members. He was stunned for a moment. Soon he began crying. However, those were tears of joy. He looked at the skies and muttered, "God finally took justice for us." He was about to run to his village when he suddenly noticed a small kid. He looked at Ranmaru and wondered, who is this kid, and how did he come here? Whatever, since God showed me mercy, I should look after this child. He picked up Ranmaru and began moving towards the village. Unknown to him, a pair of eyes were watching him. Fujin had left a shadow clone to keep an eye on Ranmaru. The clone thought, "Good, exactly as I wanted. If he didn't do that, I would have had to put him under a genjutsu." Meanwhile, the people in the mines were still quite confused. The Kurasuke family members made the people get back to mining as Rhaega wouldn't like it if they stopped. Work was happening as usual in the gold mine when suddenly a few heads flew in the air. All the Kurasuke family members were killed. Well, all but 2 members. Those 2 were inside a cave in the mine. They were about to come out when they saw their comrades who were standing at the entrance of the cave suddenly collapse. In fear, both hid inside the cave. They only dared to come out after several hours. After seeing the headless bodies of all their comrades in the gold mine, both ran away without any hesitation. Unknown to them, they were followed by another shadow clone of Fujin. In the village, the man who was buried alive returned and informed everyone about what he saw at the graveyard. Around the same time, the workers in the mine also returned and informed the village about how everyone from the Kurasuki family was dead or missing. The village immediately broke into celebration. Since Ranmaru was found at the place where the dead bodies of the Kurasuki family members were found, he was considered a lucky charm. The villagers took care of him. They were surprised to find that he was a cripple after he woke up. However, they still arranged for his food and had their best doctor take a look at him. As for the one who had created this entire situation, he was standing atop one of the cliffs a few dozen kilometers away from the village. Fujin was still in his Akuro disguise. He was holding the Kiba blades. He ate a special soldier pill while thinking, time to test these blades. Then I'll go and pick up Ranmaru. Fujin raised the Kiba blades and crossed them above his head. He remembered the process from Reiga's memories and controlled his lightning chakra in the same manner. Immediately, a lightning ball began forming between his two swords. He shot the lightning ball into the valley and analyzed, not bad. This sword is relatively easy to use. However, it could be more because I am already used to using the blade of the Thunder Spirit. Regardless, it shouldn't take much time to learn all of Reiga's jutsus. Mastering them might need some time though. These blades also have an amplification factor like the blade of the Thunder Spirit. However, it is only around 3 to 4 times. A shame that I can't stack up the buffs of these two swords and the blade of the Thunder Spirit. If I could, then blowing up the entire root headquarters wouldn't have been an issue. Unfortunately, I need to control my chakra properly while using the amplification feature of either of the blades. Once the amplification occurs, I can't control that chakra like the chakra in my body. I can only use it to create a jutsu and fire it. If I transfer it to another blade, then even though the amplification might occur, I won't be able to use it to create a jutsu. That said, I wonder if there are any tools in this world that allow a direct amplification of chakra while still allowing me to control it freely. If so, then I might be able to use that to stack up amplifications. Unfortunately, considering that there isn't any record of it, it probably doesn't exist. Anyway, another restriction of the Kiba blades is that these blades aren't as versatile as the blade of the Thunder Spirit when it comes to channeling jutsus. Reiga spent a long time trying to figure out the optimal jutsus for the blade. I won't be able to use this blade for other jutsus. Fortunately, I don't have a need to do so. I just need one jutsu. Fujin pointed both his Kiba blades towards the sky and flowed his lightning chakra into the blade. He fired a lightning bolt from the blades into the clouds. He closed his eyes and felt his chakra that dispersed into the cloud. Normally, he wouldn't be able to control that chakra. However, with the Kiba blades, he could sense the changes that chakra caused in the sky very clearly and control it to an extent. Fujin looked at the skies and thought, incredible. It's as if the main purpose of this sword is to control lightning. The lightning chakra I fired is stimulating the formation of lightning in the cloud. Though it takes some seconds, I'll be able to control when and where the lightning falls. As soon as he felt that it was ready, Fujin pointed his Kiba blades towards one of the other cliffs. A lightning bolt fell towards the cliff from the sky. However, it missed the mark and struck on its slopes. Fujin muttered, I will need to work on perfecting my aim. Chapter 542, A Little Play 1. Daimyo-sama, the environment finally seems to have calmed down. It might be safe to continue our journey. A man rushed into a tent and announced loudly. Inside the room was the daimyo of the Land of Frost. The daimyo's ears perked up on hearing that. He cursed, it's about time. Did anyone find out what it was? The man shook his head and said, I am sorry, Daimyo-sama. The samurais couldn't get close to it as it was very dangerous for them as well. A couple of them almost died. They decided against investigating again. The daimyo thought for a bit before saying, "Let it be. Since it has passed, we don't need to worry. We will send some experts here later to investigate this area." The daimyo of the Land of Frost was visiting several other daimyos on a schedule for some political talks. He was en route to meet another daimyo when suddenly lightning began falling non-stop from the skies some distance ahead on their path, forcing them to camp there. Though the lightning would stop occasionally, it would begin again when they started moving. They dispatched the samurais to check what was happening, but some lightning strikes fell very close to the samurais, scaring them away. Since it was mountainous terrain, they only had one path to move through. As a result, his group was stuck there for 2 whole days. Needless to say, all the lightning that fell in their path was from Fujin, who was training. Though he had no idea who it was, he didn't want to be disturbed while he was training. As a result, the entire mountain pass stayed closed for 2 days. After training for 2 days, Fujin was finally satisfied and moved from the area. As he moved back to the village near the gold mine, his appearance changed again. His height returned to normal, and his appearance changed into that of an old man. He changed his outfit as well. If someone saw him now, they would think that he is a wise and holy old man. As he moved, he analyzed, "I can now control the lightning very well with the Kiba blades. I'm still not as good as Reiga, but it's only a matter of time before I surpass what he could do with these blades." For Reiga, the Kiba blades were the core of his strength. However, even for my Akuro identity, it is just one of my many trump cards. There are just 3 abilities of these swords that I need and will focus on. The first is using them as normal swords for close combat. With my chakra flow, I don't need to work on this aspect even a bit. The second is controlling the lightning. Even though the Kiba blades aren't very versatile for using other jutsus, they are amazing at manipulating natural lightning. With their help, I can create a jutsu equivalent to or stronger than Sasuke's Kirin. Considering the amplification feature of these blades, I will need only a fraction of the chakra that he needed to use Kirin. Once I create this jutsu, it will undoubtedly become Akuro's most destructive jutsu. The third application of these blades that I found very interesting was the lightning strike armor. Konoha already tried replicating some aspects of the lightning chakra mode by developing burst, lightning transformation, and electric skin jutsu. Along with this armor, I might have some headway in copying the lightning chakra mode. If I somehow master it, then this identity will have peak rank S battle strength without having to use the flying thunder god jutsu. That said, replicating the lightning chakra mode is easier said than done. Maybe I should infiltrate Kumagakure someday to steal information on how to master the lightning chakra mode. Lost in his thoughts, Fujin reached close to the village. He dispelled his shadow clone that was keeping an eye on Ranmaru and immediately stopped moving at such a high speed. Instead, he walked the normal path at a slow speed while processing the clone's memories. Soon, his figure became visible from the village. A couple of villagers noticed him. His appearance immediately caught their attention. A few approached him and began a conversation. Fujin immediately spun a story about how he was a traveling sage who focused only on healing people. He asked them to bring people who were injured to him to heal. The villagers were surprised and relieved to hear that. Due to being forced to work in the mines and being beaten up whenever their bodies couldn't keep up, several villagers were injured. Though they were treated by the doctor in the village, the injuries weren't healed yet. Hence, they were happy to see a medical ninja appear in their village and offer to heal them for free. While some villagers were on guard due to having been tricked by Reiga not long ago, most didn't find it strange for several reasons. While uncommon, there were several ninjas who traveled in this manner and offered their help to common people without asking anything from them. The stories of such philanthropic acts were well known among common people. In some rare instances, when the morale of the entire country is low due to some incidents, the hidden villages do philanthropic work as well, though it was very rare in peacetime. Of course, Even though such philanthropic ninjas existed in the world, they were extremely rare. Unlike Fujin's previous world, this world was extremely dangerous. Not everyone could move around freely like Jiraiya or Tsunade. A rogue ninja would eventually be hunted down, and if that philanthropic ninja was still a part of a hidden village, then he or she would never be permitted to do such work for a long time. That is why the common people would always be extremely happy and welcoming when someone appeared to do such philanthropic work. Of course, there was another reason why they trusted Fujin so easily. It was because he cast a genjutsu to lower their alertness and make them more trusting in nature. Some injured people approached Fujin. He healed their injuries using the mystical palm jutsu one by one. Seeing that there was nothing fishy, the remaining injured villagers approached him as well. A few diseased people also approached, but Fujin said that he unfortunately couldn't help them. When everyone was healed, an old man asked, "Can you heal someone who is paralyzed?" Fujin pretended to think for a few seconds and replied, "It depends on the type of paralysis, so I can't say for sure." "Lead me to the patient and I'll take a look." The old man nodded. He and some other villagers led him to the house in which Ranmaru was kept. Ranmaru, who was lying in bed, saw Fujin appear. As soon as Fujin saw him, a frown appeared on his face which was noticed by Ranmaru and some other villagers. One guy asked, "Is there an issue?" Fujin shook his head and replied, "No, I will take a look." He approached Ranmaru and pretended to inspect his legs while thinking, "I have already inspected his paralysis. Though I don't have much medical knowledge of how to treat paralysis, Yoshi and Isamu forcefully taught me some basics when I was learning the mystical palm jutsu. Ranmaru's paralysis is very easy to heal. All that is needed is to insert chakra into his body and have it flow through his chakra network in his legs to solve his paralysis. Any medical ninja can do it. Had I not read their memories, I would have wondered why Reiga didn't ask a medical ninja to look at Ranmaru. However, the answer to that question becomes very easy to figure considering that they considered each other to be an extension of themselves. How would Reiga be Ranmaru's hands and feet if Ranmaru can walk by himself? Fujin smiled and asked, "What is your name, young one?" Ranmaru was surprised by the kind smile. In the past couple of days, he had seen too many kind smiles. He had thought that it was just the villagers who were happy to see Reiga gone. Seeing their relief, he understood that the words of Reiga's killer were true. He and Reiga had committed several sins which weighed heavily on him and made him depressed. Ranmaru replied, "I am Ranmaru." Fujin said, "Ranmaru, such a good name. From today onwards, you will be able to walk like anyone else." Fujin's words shocked Ranmaru. Before he could process his thoughts, Fujin pointed his palm towards his legs and a green glow appeared. He said, "It will sting a bit, but don't worry, it won't hurt. Clench your fists and grit your teeth." Fujin inserted his chakra into Ranmaru's legs. Ranmaru immediately clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. The villagers watched with slight nervousness on seeing his expressions. Chapter 543, A Little Play Too. Though Fujin said that it wouldn't hurt much, Ranmaru felt as if several dozen needles were being inserted into his legs every second. If it was any normal boy instead of him, he would have long started crying loudly. After a few minutes, Ranmaru grew used to the pain. More importantly, he began feeling sensations in his legs. For the first time in his life, he was able to move them slightly. Don't try to move your legs right now. Don't worry, you can walk and run as much as you want very soon. Fujin instructed on seeing Ranmaru trying to move his legs. Ranmaru immediately stopped. After another 10 minutes, Fujin finally stopped. He pulled his hand back and said with a smile on his face, "You can try to move now." Ranmaru nodded and tried to move his legs. To his surprise, he was able to move his legs. However, he was still quite slow. Fujin said, "It will feel weird at the start, however you will soon get used to it." Ranmaru tried to get up. A couple of villagers assisted him and helped him get off the bed. With their help, Ranmaru took the first steps of his life. When he did, his feelings immediately became very complicated. He thought, I always believed that Reiga was my hands and feet. However, Reiga is dead and I can walk by myself now. Does this mean that the meaning we discovered was fake? The villagers were unaware of his internal struggle and became happy for him. Many began to congratulate him. A few thanked Fujin as well. Fujin waited for a few minutes for the commotion to settle down before saying, "Everyone, I need to talk with Ranmaru about his condition. Could you give us a few minutes alone?" The villagers nodded and left. Within a minute, only Ranmaru and Fujin were left in the room. Ranmaru thanked Fujin for healing him. Fujin smiled and said, "For someone who walked for the first time in his life, you sure don't seem happy. Mind telling me what it is that is weighing on your mind?" Since his abilities were sealed, Ranmaru couldn't detect that Fujin was using a genjutsu on him to make him trust Fujin more easily. In addition, he had just healed Ranmaru's legs. As a result, Ranmaru felt that Fujin could be trusted. However, even then, he shook his head and said, "It's nothing." Fujin was surprised. He wondered, even in this situation, he isn't willing to open up. Looks like staying with Reiga made his mentality quite strong. "Oh well," Fujin said, "nothing. I wouldn't call such a complicated seal on your body nothing, kiddo. When I first saw you, that seal shocked me. I never thought that someone would put such a complicated seal on a little child. So can you tell me what it is? Perhaps I might be able to help you." Ranmaru was surprised. Ever since Fujin woke him up after killing Reiga, he hadn't been able to use his abilities. As a result, everyone thought that he was an ordinary kid. He didn't imagine that he'd meet a Fuinjutsu expert just a few days after the seal was applied to him. His expression became dejected as he admitted, "I unknowingly did some horrible things. Things I thought were good for the people but were actually harmful. As a result, someone sealed my abilities and said that my abilities will stay sealed until I do good work." Fujin acted like he was surprised and said, "That's a surprise." I thought someone had Fujin acted like he was surprised and said, "That's a surprise. I thought someone had some ill intentions towards you. I don't know what you did, but it's good to see that you have identified your mistakes. Do you want me to break this seal?" Ranmaru was surprised by the offer. He thought for a couple of minutes before shaking his head. He answered, "No, I can't do anything for the people who suffered due to me. However, I want to do good for the people in the future. I am afraid that my abilities might put me on the wrong path again." A wide smile appeared on Fujin's face as he said, "Good attitude. You might just be suitable to be a part of my organization. Let me check your seal first." Ranmaru wondered. His organization. Fujin placed his palm on Ranmaru's forehead and inserted some chakra into it. For the next couple of minutes he pretended to check the seal. With every passing second, his smile reduced and a frown appeared on his face. He muttered, "This seal is a very high-level one. The one who put it on you is probably among the best Fuinjutsu grandmasters in the world. Unless he lifts the seal himself, it looks like doing good will be the only way to get rid of it." He looked at Ranmaru and asked, "How are you planning to do good work?" Ranmaru thought for a bit before answering, "I don't know." Fujin nodded and said, "As I thought. Would you like to come with me? The organization I created helps civilians who are being attacked by rogue ninjas and bandits. It will give you an opportunity to help the weak. The main reason why I came here is because I heard that this village was being tormented by one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist and his goons. However, it looks like someone already killed them." Ranmaru was surprised to hear that his benefactor was here to deal with Reiga and the Kurasuki family as well. He thought, "It seems like we were extremely tyrannical for so many people wanting to deal with us. Should I tell him that I was working with Reiga?" Fujin continued, "If you come with me, you'll be trained properly for a few years. Once you become strong enough, you'll be able to help out people with your own strength." Instead of giving his answer, Ranmaru said, "I don't want to hide things from you. Until a few days ago, I was working with Reiga." Surprise appeared on Fujin's face again. He said, "I see. Can you tell me what circumstances made you work with him and what happened to him?" Ranmaru explained to Fujin about his background, his Kekkei Genkai, how he met Reiga and how Reiga and the Kurasuki family were killed a couple of days ago. Fujin heard him patiently. When Ranmaru was done, Fujin sighed and muttered, "Such a complicated life at such a young age." In any case, there is no reason to not give you an opportunity to redeem yourself. My offer still stands. Ranmaru immediately replied, "I would be honored to be a part of your organization." Fujin smiled and said, "Good." Fujin explained to him the details of the organization and applied the phantom seal on Ranmaru's back. He informed the villagers that he would be taking Ranmaru as a disciple and taking him on his journey. The villagers were surprised, but seeing that Ranmaru had agreed, no one stopped him. They bid their farewells to Ranmaru. Fujin carried Ranmaru to the Phantom Haven base. En route, he wore a mask and instructed, "Ranmaru, don't tell anyone that you saw my face. Also, don't tell anyone about your past with Reiga or your sealed abilities." Ranmaru nodded. Fujin reached the Phantom Haven base, handed Ranmaru to Shigeaki and said, "He'll be joining here as a student. Reiga and his subordinates were dealt with by someone. He won't be harming anyone else." Shigeaki was surprised to hear that someone as strong as Reiga was dealt with by someone else so soon after he informed Fujin about him. He nodded and arranged for Ranmaru to be placed with other students. Following Fujin's advice, Ranmaru tried making friends with the kids. Fujin and Shigeaki observed them from some distance away. Shigeaki asked, "Is there anything special about him, Shiden?" The reason why Shigeaki asked the question was because this was the first time Fujin recruited someone other than him. Fujin answered, "The circumstances he grew up in were very bad. Though life in our base isn't exactly normal, it'll still be a great improvement for him. Anyway, he is quite talented. I anticipate that he'll manage to become an elite jounin in a couple of decades." Shigeaki was surprised to hear Fujin's evaluation. He remembered how strict Fujin had been while categorizing the ranks. What Shigeaki didn't know was that Fujin believed that Ranmaru should be able to become a rank S ninja if he didn't slack off. Though it was unlikely for him to reach that level before the Fourth Great Ninja War, he might reach it a few years after the war. Even though Fujin didn't have any concrete plans for the organization after the Fourth Great Ninja War, there was no reason to not recruit a possible rank S ninja who could heal him within moments, especially considering how little time he personally invested in Ranmaru. Seeing Shigeki's expression, Fujin instructed, "Don't treat him differently from other kids for that reason though. Other kids won't like it if someone gets special treatment. Just train him like anyone else." Shigeaki nodded. Fujin gave some more instructions and took his leave. On leaving the Phantom Haven base, he muttered, "Time to complete the mission that Hiruzen assigned me." Chapter 544, Magnet Release. Fujin and his clone created shadow clones and dispelled them to trade information. On understanding the location of his clone, Fujin quickly made his way across the land of rivers and located the two subordinates of Reiga whom he had left alive. The two had set up a tent in a forest and were hiding there. What they had seen in the gold mine had horrified both of them, and they had traveled several hundred kilometers away from the gold mine. They relaxed only after surviving for a couple of days as no one chased after them, or so they thought. It hadn't been even a day since they had put their guard down slightly when suddenly a strong wind began blowing through the area. To their horror, the winds casually tore through their tent. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of small cuts appeared on their bodies. The wind was so potent that several nerves and tendons in their bodies were cut, forcing them to their knees. They were unable to move their limbs when Fujin's figure appeared in front of them. The two looked at the Konoha headband he was wearing and immediately became worried as they remembered their past actions. As if reading their minds, Fujin asked, "You two used to work for Reiga, right?" Both immediately shouted, "No. We never worked for Reiga." Immediately, more cuts appeared on their bodies. The new cuts were much deeper than the previous cuts, causing them even more pain. Their screams scared away some wild animals around that area. Fujin said, "I can sense whether you are telling the truth or not. If you lie again, I will kill you. Now tell me whether Reiga attacked 2 squads from Konoha. One of the two instinctively answered, "We don't know. We never saw him attack any Konoha ninja." The guy kneeling next to him watched with horror in his eyes as his friend was beheaded. Fujin turned his gaze towards him and asked, "Do you want to die as well?" The guy immediately said everything that had happened between Reiga and Konoha ninjas. Fujin asked, "Do you remember where their bodies were buried?" Not wanting to end up like his friend, he nodded and told Fujin the location. Fujin stored the dead body in a scroll before he grabbed the alive guy's neck from behind and dragged him for hundreds of kilometers across the land of rivers until he reached the spot the guy said. He dug out the dead bodies and stored them in a scroll. The last Kurisuke family member asked, "I have led you to their bodies. Can you let me go now?" "Sure," Fujin replied before letting him go from this world. He stored his dead body in a scroll as well while thinking, Hiruzen will definitely inquire how Reiga died. For him to die right after the mission was assigned to me is suspicious. Not to mention, considering that Reiga could control the lightning, Hiruzen might suspect him to be behind the destruction of Root headquarters. These two will form the perfect alibi for the details I plan on feeding to Hiruzen. He can read their memories and verify a part of my details. That will be enough to stop him from looking any further. That said, it might have been fun to see him trying to find who killed Reiga, hee. Though going by what happened when I attacked Root, he might assign this mission to me as well. With the mission complete, Fujin began moving back to Konoha. Having eaten the soldier pill, Fujin didn't need to rest. He traveled non-stop and reached Konoha by the next evening. Hiruzen was just about to wrap up his work when Fujin appeared in his office. He was slightly surprised to see Fujin arrive so soon. He thought, the ninjas I dispatched to the land of rivers didn't see any signs of him. Did he find out why those 2 squads went missing so quickly? Hiruzen didn't have much hope of finding those 2 squads. He had just given the mission to Fujin because Fujin wanted to spend some time away from the village. He said with a smile, "Fujin, it's good to see you again so soon. How did the missions go?" "I received some interesting reports from the land of rivers." Hiruzen still remembered that puppets had destroyed the Yamakawa town. He was curious to know how Fujin got his hands on so many puppets and how he became so masterful at controlling them. Fujin chuckled and said, "The missions were indeed interesting. I came across a couple of ninjas that I didn't expect to find in the land of rivers. That said, the information might be sensitive." Hiruzen got the clue and glanced at his Anbu guards. Within seconds, they left the room and activated all the seals. Hiruzen asked, "So, who did you run into?" Fujin didn't answer his question and instead placed a couple of storage scrolls on Hiruzen's desk and said in a serious tone, "This one has the dead bodies of the 8 Chunins who went missing." Hiruzen sighed on hearing that. While he had expected them to be dead, getting the confirmation didn't make it pleasant. Losing 8 ninjas in peacetime wasn't something he wanted to see. He asked, "Who was it?" Fujin answered, "A former member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, Reiga Kurisuke. He had established a stronghold in a village that had a gold mine and had more or less enslaved the villagers there. I suspected that he was the one behind the missing Chunins when I heard that he was in the land of rivers. However, when I went to find him, I learnt that he had been defeated by someone and his subordinates were slaughtered 3 days before I reached the village." Hiruzen was surprised. He muttered, "To be able to defeat one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist and slaughter all his subordinates. Who was it?" Fujin shrugged and said, "No idea. I placed a villager under genjutsu and learnt that a huge fight took place in the graveyard where Reiga and his followers were burying a living man. Since the villagers were far away, they didn't see who it was. They only saw lightning striking that area repeatedly. Sometime after the fight stopped, Reiga's subordinates, who were overlooking the operations in the mine, were beheaded in a flash. Whoever that person was, we can say that he is incredibly fast at the very least. The villagers recovered the dead bodies of all but 2 of Reiga's subordinates. Reiga's body was missing as well. so I am not sure whether he is dead or whether he escaped. Considering how little information we have, it could have been Rhaegar himself who went crazy and killed his subordinates. It's difficult to say for sure. Anyway, I hunted down the two subordinates whose bodies weren't found and interrogated them. Rhaegar killed those two squads and buried them some distance away from the village. This scroll has the bodies of those two subordinates. Perhaps we can learn more by reading their memories. Hiruzen thought for a bit before saying, "Did you get the dead bodies of his Hiruzen thought for a bit before saying, "Did you get the dead bodies of his subordinates who were in the graveyard? Perhaps we could know what happened from their memories." Fujin shook his head and said, "That path is closed as well. It had already been 3 days since they were killed. Their memories would have started dissipating. Besides, from what I found out, they had a hole in their heads, so chances of being able to read their memories are more or less zero." Hiruzen sighed and muttered, "They were very thorough. Nothing we can do, unfortunately. Anyway, what happened in Yamakawa town? When did you become a puppeteer?" Fujin raised his left eyebrow and asked, "When did I have time to become a puppeteer? I wasn't the one who attacked with puppets. The Yamakawa family was attacked by Sasori of the Red Sand when I was in the town, so even if we hadn't undertaken this mission, the Yamakawa family would have been history." Hiruzen was surprised. He wondered, what was Sasori doing there? Fujin continued, "I am not sure why Sasori attacked them. My only guess is that someone gave that mission to Akatsuki. Most of the people in the mansion were killed by Sasori. I only killed their family head and the Suna ninjas hiding under his mansion." Fujin placed some more scrolls on Hiruzen's desk, while saying, "These scrolls have their dead bodies." Hiruzen looked at his desk. Even though they were stored inside scrolls, there were as many as 33 dead bodies on his desk. While Hiruzen didn't find it odd if a common person were to know of it, he would wonder if it was the Hokage's office or a morgue. Hiruzen asked, "Did you fight Sasori?" Fujin nodded and said, "Yeah. I wanted to test a new jutsu against a rank S opponent." A frown appeared on his face as he said, "There is something strange about him. One of his puppets could control iron." Hiruzen's eyes immediately widened. Chapter 545, A Fair Trade. Hiruzen's eyes widened. Immediately the image of the third Kazekage appeared in his mind. Unlike most of the people, Hiruzen was well aware of Sasori's human puppets, and that they could retain some of the abilities that they had when they were alive. However, if Sasori had made the third Kazekage, who had been missing since before the Third Great Ninja War began, his puppet, then it would send shockwaves throughout the ninja world. Hiruzen asked, "Did you see what the puppet looked like?" Fujin shook his head and said, "No, I was fighting from a distance and couldn't see him. I retreated right when a large amount of iron was floating outside Yamakawa town, so I can't say whether he has made the third Kazekage his puppet or if it is some other ninja who had awakened the magnet release. Irrespective, Sasori's threat is much higher than what we believe. If he can retain Kekkei Genkai and the puppets, then there is a chance that he could have several such puppets. He'll be difficult to deal with." Hiruzen agreed. Sasori's threat had to be re-evaluated. Just the magnet release was extremely troublesome to deal with. He asked, "The reports stated that over 100 puppets attacked the town at the same time. Is that true?" Fujin answered, "Yes. He could control over 100 puppets at the same time while he was standing outside the town. And from what I saw, his control over all his puppets was extremely good. Even elite Chunins might not be able to take on a single puppet considering the various traps and poisons involved. However, Jounins should be able to destroy his normal human puppets as long as Sasori isn't nearby." Hiruzen nodded and asked, "So, how did your fight go? And what happened in the town?" Fujin explained the events since he reached the town until Sasori's attack. He continued, "I took advantage of the distraction caused by Sasori's attack to sneak attack and kill the Yamakawa family head and Suna ninjas. I am not sure, but it is possible that one of the Suna ninjas was a grandmaster in Fuinjutsu. If you find some new seals from his memories, please let me know." Hiruzen was shocked to realize that a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster of Suna could have been killed. Every country treasured their Fuinjutsu Grandmasters. It was extremely difficult to kill them as they would rarely leave the village, and even when they did, they would move in secrecy and be with at least one elite jounin. The death of one Fuinjutsu Grandmaster, one elite jounin and 20 jounins and chunins would be another huge blow to Sunagakure. Fujin continued, "As for Sasori, I fought him using the new technique I created. I'm sure you might have seen it a few times. I call it the Wind Domain." Hiruzen felt slightly awkward about being called out on his spying. Even though everyone was aware that he would do it, no one ever mentioned it on his face. Luckily, he was shameless enough to not let it affect him. His expression didn't change and he just nodded. Fujin cursed internally at his shamelessness before continuing. "My wind domain can sever his chakra threads, so Sasori lost control of all of his puppets within my wind domain. I stole 64 of his human puppets before escaping." Hiruzen's eyes widened in shock once again as Fujin claimed with a mischievous smile, "Even though I am not a puppet master, I believe that I have the second strongest collection of puppets. If I train for a bit, I will become one of the top 5 puppeteers in a few months." Hiruzen thought in disbelief that jutsu where he played around by emitting wind chakra is this strong. It can sever chakra threads, and he used it to steal Sasori's puppets. The puppet masters treat their puppets as their children, and he stole as many as 64 of them and managed to escape from Sasori. Hiruzen was stunned. This was probably the first time something like this had happened ever since puppet masters came into existence. While there were some incidents of 1 or 2 puppets being stolen, they would generally be when the puppet master abandoned them to run away. What Fujin did was unprecedented. As if he just recalled something, Fujin added, "Ah right, I almost forgot. Sasori never saw my face. He doesn't know that it was me who stole his puppets, so please keep this news a secret as well. I don't want that freak chasing me around." Hiruzen's disbelief increased further as he exclaimed internally, "And Sasori didn't even see who stole his puppets." Hiruzen was completely speechless. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He quickly gathered his thoughts and praised, "Great work, Fujin. I didn't expect something like this to happen when I assigned you this mission. What are you planning to do with the puppets?" Since Hiruzen couldn't find any words to describe Fujin's feats, he decided to stop thinking about it and directly focused on the puppets. He thought, "There are a few ninjas in this village who like puppetry. Unfortunately, our knowledge in this aspect is very lacking as compared to Suna. However, with 64 ready-made puppets of high quality, I can raise a few Jounin-level puppet masters. Not to mention, we can also research these puppets to improve our knowledge." Fujin thought for a bit before saying, "I am not sure. I did check a few puppets and I am not a fan of human puppets. Even by our standards, this technique is incredibly cruel. However, if the situation is dire, then there is no harm in using dead enemies for this technique. Regardless, it'll be a waste to ditch these 64 puppets for that reason. I'm planning to train a bit and become a puppet master myself. It'll add another aspect to my abilities." Hiruzen was surprised. The way Fujin had said it earlier, he thought that Fujin was joking. He didn't expect him to be serious. Hiruzen said, "While mastering chakra threads wouldn't be a challenge for you, being a puppet master involves a lot of other things. For starters, you need to be able to make puppets with a lot of traps in them. In addition, you need to be an expert at poison to make those traps deadly. You will also need high medical knowledge to make any modifications to those 64 puppets, considering that they were created from dead humans." Fujin nodded and said, "Yes, I am not too worried about creating traps as I should be able to handle them. As for medical and poison knowledge, I was planning to take on Yoshi-sensei's offer to improve those aspects in any case, so I should be fine." To Hiruzen's dismay, Fujin had already thought of everything needed to become a puppet master. He sighed and said, "Fujin, you have already reached rank S. While it's fine to diversify your abilities, Becoming a full-fledged puppet master won't do you any good. I'll recommend keeping a few of them and giving me the rest. There are a few ninjas in our village who are extremely interested in puppetry, but unfortunately fall short due to not having access to good information on it. I can create a few jounins and hopefully one or two elite jounins with those puppets. This way, our village will benefit more. Fujin looked at Hiruzen and thought, wow, good speech. His words are true, but that requires me to give things without getting anything in return. While it's true that Hiruzen helped me in the past, he didn't spend money on anything other than my swords. In fact, he probably earned more than that by betting on me in the Chunin exams. I would have still given them if I needed a lot from Hiruzen in the future. Unfortunately, there is not much he can give me anymore. He won't give me the Edo Tensei right now. If he dies against Orochimaru, then obviously I can't take anything from him. If he survives, then the fame I gain during that war will be sufficient to ask for what I want from him irrespective of our relationship. Hiruzen looked at Fujin and asked, well, Fujin sighed and said, I was planning to use the 64 puppets as a trump card. If I fell in a situation where my squad had to retreat, I could have my shadow clones use the puppets to hold back enemies while we retreated to safety. I might not be able to do the same with a few puppets. That said, I understand your view. Getting more jounins and perhaps elite jounins will be beneficial for the village. How about this? I'll keep just 10 puppets with me and give you the rest. However, I want a forbidden technique to have another trump card. Hiruzen was surprised. He thought, I should have known. I guess he is still upset that I didn't give him the scroll of sealing. He asked, which jutsu do you want? Fujin said, Spirit Transformation Technique. Chapter 546, Hiruzen's Suspicion and Soul. Hiruzen was surprised. He wondered the Spirit Transformation Technique, the one Dan created. Why is Fujin interested in it? Hiruzen fell into deep thought. The technique was extremely complicated. More importantly, it was extremely powerful and dangerous, both to the enemies and to the user. Hiruzen analyzed why Fujin would need such a technique, but couldn't come up with any answer. In the end, he speculated, does he plan on taking over someone's body temporarily? Or does he just want another trump card, as he said? Hiruzen couldn't be sure. He said, learning too many complicated techniques at the same time isn't good, Fujin. You are learning the 8 inner gates technique. In addition, I also gave you the scroll on Flying Thunder God Jutsu. What is your progress with them? Fujin sighed and said, I haven't been able to make any progress with the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. I managed to create the seal with ease, but I am stuck on stage 2 of the training. I am progressing well in the 8 inner gates, but that technique is just dependent on how much my body progresses, so it won't interfere with other training. Hiruzen sighed internally. A shame. It would have been very helpful for the village if he could master the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. We would have reached close to our strength during the Third Great Ninja War in terms of rank S ninjas. That said, if he hasn't learnt the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, then there is no need to not give him the Spirit Transformation Jutsu. If he manages to master it, then Konoha will have another strong means of attack during the next Great War. Even if he doesn't learn it, the training will improve his control over the Yin Chakra, which will allow him to strengthen his Genjutsu, which lacks in comparison to his other skills. Besides, Sasori's puppets could be very important for the village. Even though it won't have a huge impact today, it could result in a wave of enthusiastic youngsters choosing to become puppet masters at some point in the future. Once that happens, the village can create a new special unit. That said, I don't necessarily need to make Fujin hand over those puppets. Even if I let him keep them all, he will eventually pass them to someone. Perhaps his students or children or someone who catches his eye. However, it will stay only among that small group of people. It is better if those puppets and their knowledge are directly under the village's control. He replied, all right, I'll prepare the scroll for you. Fujin commented in his mind, of course you will. It doesn't cost you anything. Why did you take so much time to think like I was asking you to donate a kidney? Fujin said, "That's great. I'll decide which puppets to keep in the meantime." Hiruzen replied, "Sure. Is there anything else that happened during your mission?" Fujin shook his head and answered, "Not really. At least nothing that caught my eye." Hiruzen replied, "All right. Considering the nature of this mission, you don't need to file any report. We will make Suna take the blame for attacking Yamakawa town. Don't tell anyone about the fact that you were in the land of rivers during this time." Fujin nodded and took his leave. After he left, Hiruzen's expression became serious. He analyzed, "There are a lot of things that don't add up." Sasori attacking the town at the same time can be considered as a coincidence, but for so many coincidences to happen when Fujin was in that country, Hiruzen recalled the incidents that happened in the land of rivers when Fujin was present there. He thought, first Sasori and Fujin attacked Yamakawa town at the same time. A few days later, someone plundered 3 nobles in Tanigakure without alerting anyone. A day later, someone attacked and destroyed Reiga's organization. To be able to steal so efficiently, the thief must have a very high capability. More importantly, he would need to be close to a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster. And to be able to uproot Reiga's organization, the attacker needs to be a rank S ninja or have multiple elite jounins. Is it just a coincidence? Not to mention, I almost forgot about Reiga. His swords can amplify lightning jutsus as well, though not to the extent of Sensei's sword. He could be a possible culprit behind the attack on the route. However, this lead is pretty much useless now. He is either dead or missing, and even Fujin couldn't track him. Even if I send a squad specialized in tracking, it'll be too late to find him irrespective of whether he's dead or alive. Though Hiruzen had sent Fujin to destroy the possible base Suna had created, he was left with even newer problems that were extremely difficult to answer. Hiruzen thought for a long time before letting out a sigh. He concluded, there is no point in suspecting Fujin for no reason. He should have a lot of money from his missions. I don't see any reason why he would need to steal a large amount of money. Similarly, I don't see any reason why he would lie if he was the one who dealt with Reiga. The only thing that comes to mind is Kiba blades, but Fujin doesn't specialize in lightning. So the blades are more or less useless for him. Considering his greedy nature, he could have used those blades to get more forbidden jutsus from me. The only thing I need to do now is keep an eye out for information related to the Kiba blades and Blade of the Thunder Spirit. If either of them appears, it might give me some clues regarding who the attacker that night was. Hiruzen immediately got into action and took steps to inform all of Konoha's spies as well as Jiraiya, asking them to give special attention to the news related to those 2 blades and inform him right away. Fujin returned straight to his home after meeting Hiruzen. He was unaware that he had raised so many doubts in Hiruzen's mind. Even if he was aware, there wasn't much he could do. The good thing was that he hadn't left any clues behind, so even if Hiruzen decided to investigate the events seriously, there wasn't anything for him to find. As he entered his house, Fujin thought, the spirit transformation technique. Tabarama had created a kinjutsu that was very similar to this, while Dan improved upon it to create this jutsu by making it more usable and versatile by adding several more abilities. To be honest, this jutsu won't be able to increase my power by much unless shadow clones can use it as well. That said, I don't think clones will be able to use this jutsu. Regardless, increasing my combat strength isn't the reason why I asked for this jutsu. This jutsu will be an excellent method to finally learn about souls. It is something I always found fascinating, even in my previous life. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything to study souls in my previous world apart from religious texts and some speculations. However, in this world, there are several techniques that utilize the soul. The Yamanaka clan's mind-body switch jutsu can transfer consciousness. Orochimaru can divide his souls and seal them into other people, making him the most difficult ninja to kill. In addition, he can also transfer his soul permanently into a vessel's body. The Reaper Death Seal sacrifices the user's soul and seals his enemy's soul. And the Edo Tensei directly summons souls from the afterlife and has them occupy a body. The spirit transformation jutsu will give me a deeper understanding of these soul-based techniques. It might also be possible to create my own soul-based techniques. If I can add the ability to affect souls to my wind domain, then I can't even guess to which level that technique would reach. And that's just the start. If I can learn more about my soul, I might be able to glean some insights into how I was able to transmigrate across worlds or perhaps dimensions. Is my soul somehow different from an ordinary soul, or does every soul transmigrate in such a manner? Studying souls might also be a way to understand whether immortality can be achieved. Orochimaru's research has already had some success. His cursed seals give him a way to revive even if his main body is killed. And if his main body can't sustain itself, he can switch bodies. However, both his methods definitely have flaws, and the flaws are quite terrifying. For someone so strong and experienced, he is extremely vulnerable to genjutsu. There is no way Hiruzen would fall prey to Itachi's genjutsu that easily. Even Jiraiya was very confident in being able to avoid his genjutsu. And in the Fourth Great Ninja War, despite fighting against Madara for so long, there was only one instance of a cage falling into genjutsu. And even then, I easily understood that he had been caught in a genjutsu. I believe that the act of dividing his soul through cursed seals should have made Orochimaru more susceptible to genjutsu. Similarly, though he can switch bodies, it is highly unlikely for a new body to be as strong as his real body. If that is true, then the Orochimaru that will fight against Hiruzen is undoubtedly not at his peak. Chapter 547, Boredom. Fujin continued analyzing. That said, even though there are issues, there is no question that both those techniques are invaluable. It's just that Orochimaru became too obsessed with them. If he had waited until he grew old to change his body, then the issue of his new body not being as strong as his real body would have been a moot point. Similarly, if, instead of creating and applying his curse seal on dozens of ninjas, he had applied curse seals on only a couple of people, then his soul wouldn't have been divided so many times, and perhaps he might not have been as susceptible to genjutsu as he currently is. Unless the very act of dividing the soul causes him to be more susceptible to genjutsu. I will need some more information on these two techniques to be able to properly analyze their flaws. Unfortunately, reading Orochimaru's memories is impossible at this point. Even with my Flying Thunder God jutsu, I can't be sure that I'll be able to capture or kill his main body. Unlike others, whom I can track down with the Flying Thunder God mark, Orochimaru might be able to get rid of that mark by shedding his skin. Fortunately, there is someone else who might have a lot of information on these two techniques. That said, I need to improve my knowledge about souls first. Without a firm base, it won't help me even if I have information. The spirit transformation jutsu should be more than enough to help me with that. Fujin stretched his body. The effect of the soldier pill was about to run out and he could feel some tiredness. He let out a yawn and thought, oh well, no point in getting too worked up for this. Once the range of my Flying Thunder God jutsu increases, I'll be the toughest ninja to kill after Obito and Orochimaru, and I'm only 16 years old. I have no need to go Orochimaru's way. At least not for another half a century. The best-case scenario would be if I could increase the lifespan of this body itself and make it infinitely more, like the Otsutsuki clan. Though it's difficult to say how that can be done. I wonder if Hagoromo's body would have been immortal if he hadn't released the 10 tails and divided it into 9 parts. Or did he divide it because his body was growing old and he understood that his body wouldn't live for long? Sigh, so many questions and so few answers. I wonder how many mysteries I'll be able to solve. Filled with such thoughts, Fujin fell asleep. The next day he got up quite late despite sleeping early. Due to the backlash of the soldier pill, he wouldn't be training that day. He freshened up and wondered what he should be doing for the day. He stood lazily on his balcony and looked at the construction work that was happening around his house. He thought, most of the work is already done. Hiruzen will start moving those kids here soon. Sigh, even more work. I'm kind of bored. Now that I think about it, I haven't done anything fun lately. It has just been training and work. Though I occasionally mess with Hiruzen and Shikaku, I haven't had too many opportunities to mess much with them. Now, what should I do for some entertainment today? Fujin thought for a while. Several ideas appeared in his mind, but none seemed fun enough. He let out a sigh and thought, there's not much I can do. Though I can think of some pranks using wind, it'll be more of an annoyance rather than fun pranks for anyone I target. Not to mention, considering my strength, pranking civilians or even ninjas might not be that fun. I could prank Naruto as his reactions are fun to see, but the poor guy might get scarred. I could prank Naruto as his reactions are fun to see, but the poor guy might get scarred for life if I overdo it. I guess I shouldn't have destroyed Root. If they still existed outside that little headquarters, I could have targeted them and enjoyed the drama and chaos that would follow. If it wouldn't have impacted the future, I could have considered starting a couple of wars to give Hiruzen and Shikaku a headache. Those two lucked out due to how considerate I am. Oh well. Fujin let out another sigh and muttered to himself, once the effects of Suna and Oto's attack are dealt with, I'll leave the village temporarily and tour the world with Kaido. Even though I was excited to be reborn in this world, the fear of the dangers here has kept me tense all the time. However, there isn't much that I need to fear with my current strength. An adventure should help me relax my nerves. It might also give me new ideas on how I can keep becoming stronger and might help me uncover more secrets in this world. Perhaps I could force some of those beasts in the sea to become my summons. That way, I will have summons for both Shiden and Akuro identities. Since he couldn't think of anything fun to do, Fujin decided to give his body some well-deserved rest. Unknown to Fujin, while he couldn't think of anything entertaining to do, some entertainment visited his home. Half an hour later, the bell rang. Fujin looked towards the direction of his door and thought, as expected, if this was my previous world, I would have wondered whether he set up a camera somewhere to see whether I was home or not. Doesn't he have his squad to have fun now? Kakashi is too lax. Despite his thoughts, Fujin wasn't displeased to see Naruto. He opened the door while thinking, oh well, even though I wasn't planning on using him for pranks, I can't say no since he is already here. Hee. Fujin opened the door and an excited Naruto exclaimed, Fujin, you are back. Fujin chuckled and said, yeah, I returned last night, come on in. Naruto immediately entered. He began talking about his new squad and updated Fujin on the new events happening in his life. At one point he exclaimed, man, I thought I would do something cool after becoming a ninja, but Grandpa Hawkage only makes us run after cats and dogs and makes us do menial jobs. This is totally not what I imagined, Fujin chuckled as some memories surfaced. He thought, considering that every ninja went through that, there is no way this tradition is changing. He said, don't worry, Naruto, it gets better. Naruto looked at him and asked, really? Fujin nodded and said, yes. You'll only have to do such missions for a couple of years. Then Grandpa Hawkage will assign you missions where you can eliminate bad bandits and save innocent people. Naruto's eyes widened in horror. He exclaimed loudly, a couple of years. He looked down with his head in his hands and muttered, I will have to chase cats and dogs, babysit kids and pull out weeds for 2 years. Fujin just grinned as he saw Naruto experiencing a nightmare in the middle of the day. He thought, I hadn't thought of this earlier. If Hiruzen or Tsunade do assign me a squad, it might be fun to make them do rank D missions for a couple of years. No, make that 3. In 3 years, I'll train them to be at least as strong as Jounins, if not elite Jounins, but only let them do rank D missions. Then I'll send that Jounin-level squad into the Chunin exams. That would be a sight to see. Haha, Naruto didn't know about Fujin's thoughts. If he did, he would thank the gods that he wasn't a part of his squad. When Naruto finally recovered from the horrendous news, he looked at Fujin and asked, "Can you teach me a strong wind jutsu? Sasuke knows the fireball jutsu and I don't want to lose to him." Fujin tilted his head and asked, "You said your sensei is Kakashi, right?" Naruto nodded. Fujin asked again, "Hate Kakashi?" Naruto became confused but nodded again. Fujin showed a deadpan expression and asked, "Why are you asking me to teach you jutsus then?" Naruto became even more confused and asked, "What do you mean?" Fujin sighed and asked, "Did you not do any research on him? Hate Kakashi is a ninja famous throughout the world for knowing more than 1,000 jutsus." Naruto's eyes widened in shock. He exclaimed, Thou, 1,000. Fujin showed a tired expression and sighed. He looked at Naruto and asked, "You didn't know that?" Opposite to his expression, Fujin's thoughts were very cheerful. He thought, "I finally have an extremely entertaining idea." Chapter 548, Target Kakashi. Naruto exclaimed, "I had no idea that Kakashi-sensei was so cool." Suddenly he had a thought. He looked at Fujin and asked in a confused tone, "But if he knows that many jutsus, why didn't he ever teach us any jutsu? I even asked him several times to teach me a cool jutsu, but he never taught me anything." Fujin showed a confused expression as well and asked, "He didn't," Naruto replied. "He didn't. He just taught us formations and teamwork, you know." Fujin put up a thoughtful expression as he said in an unsure tone, "Well, teamwork and formations are important too, but why wouldn't he teach you jutsus?" Fujin pretended to be in deep thought for a few seconds. Naruto didn't disturb him and waited patiently for Fujin to be done thinking. Fujin's eyes suddenly widened as he exclaimed, "Ah, I got it." Naruto listened with anticipation as Fujin explained, "I guess he doesn't think that you and your teammates are worthy enough to be taught his special jutsus yet. Did you do anything to prove yourself to him yet?" Naruto replied unsurely, "We passed his graduation test." Fujin raised an eyebrow and asked, "Your team managed to defeat Kakashi?" Naruto's voice became softer as he answered, "No, we didn't manage to get the bells. He passed us because we decided that our teammates were more important than orders." Fujin waved his hand dismissively and said, "That's good, but that's just the basic requirement to become a genin. It can't be considered as proving your worth. Did you or your team do anything else that was impressive?" Naruto crossed his arms and answered unhappily, "Other than that, we only did lame missions and teamwork exercises. How can I prove myself while we are catching cats and dogs?" Fujin's expression became very serious. He looked at Naruto and said in a strict tone, "Naruto, a ninja must see underneath the underneath. I suspect that Kakashi has been giving you 3 opportunities to prove yourselves. However, since your mind is so focused on missions and training, you 3 have completely missed it." Naruto muttered, "Underneath the underneath. I know that, but what signs did Kakashi-sensei give us?" He became confused once again. Looking at Fujin, he wondered, "Why do I become so confused whenever I talk with Fujin? What was underneath those lame missions?" Fujin rested his right elbow on his left hand and his chin on his right hand. He put up his thinking face again and muttered, "Let's see. Hate Kakashi. 3 new genins, easy missions, and teamwork exercises." Fujin pretended to think for a couple of minutes before his face suddenly lit up. He smiled and said, "I see it now." Naruto excitedly asked, "What is it?" Fujin answered, "It's simple really. He is teaching the 3 of you teamwork, meaning that he wants the 3 of you to work together. And he is giving the 3 of you easy missions, meaning that you guys still have some energy to do something else while you 3 are completing the mission." Naruto's eyes widened. He said, "I never thought of it this way. You are damn smart, Fujin." Fujin chuckled and continued, "That something else is your opportunity to do something to prove yourself. As for what that can be, let's see." Fujin pretended to think again for half a minute before continuing, "Well, knowing Kakashi, you can prove yourself to him in 2 ways." Fujin raised 2 fingers as Naruto watched with more attention than the combined attention he paid during his 6 years in the academy. Fujin said, The first way is to steal the book he keeps reading. Kakashi values that book very much, and it won't be easy for you three to do it. If you do, then you'll prove that you are worthy of being taught his special jutsus. Naruto exclaimed. His book. Immediately the memory of Kakashi reading the book while they did missions appeared in his mind. He thought, Fujin is right. Kakashi-sensei does love his book a lot. If we can take it away from him, he'll be impressed with our abilities. What's the second thing? Fujin continued. The second way is for you three to see what Kakashi's real face behind that mask is. Very few in the village know what he looks like behind the mask. If you three can do it, he'll be impressed for sure. Naruto's eyes widened again as he thought, he's right again. We don't even know what he looks like. The more Naruto thought, the more he felt that Fujin's words made complete sense. He exclaimed, I never thought of it in this manner. Fujin smiled and said, that's why he hasn't taught you his jutsus yet. Once your team begins making some progress in these aspects, he'll begin reconsidering and will eventually teach you. That said, don't tell him or even your teammates that I was the one who gave you this idea. Otherwise, he'll think that it wasn't you who looked underneath the underneath. Fujin blinked his left eye as he said the last sentence. Naruto immediately understood his message. He quickly got up and said, You are the best, Fujin. I'll prove to Kakashi-sensei that I am worthy in no time, believe it. Naruto quickly rushed out of Fujin's house. He wanted to meet up with Sasuke and Sakura and form a plan to do either of the two tasks. A grin formed on Fujin's face when Naruto left his house impatiently. He muttered to himself, now that should guarantee some entertainment. It's a shame that these three aren't strong enough to give Kakashi a nightmare, but they should cause a few headaches at least. The next time Naruto comes to meet me, I'll tell him that if he wants Hiruzen to give him a better mission, he'll have to successfully prank Hiruzen until he feels that Naruto and his team are worthy. After all, why should Kakashi have all the fun? It's a shame that I can't use these three to harass Shikaku or Danzo. Otherwise, it would have been perfect. Oh well, I'll start sending a shadow clone to keep an eye on them from tomorrow. Wouldn't want to miss the free entertainment, hee. With some entertainment guaranteed, Fujin's mood improved. He divided the puppets that Sasori donated to him. Unlike what he had said to Hiruzen, Fujin had already thoroughly researched the puppets. He didn't need any time to decide. He kept the 15 best puppets for himself and decided to give Hiruzen the remaining 49 puppets. He rested the rest of the day and visited some of his favorite restaurants in Konoha. Meanwhile, Naruto gathered Sakura and Sasuke together despite it being an off day. He quickly explained to them what Fujin had informed him. Both looked at him skeptically. Sakura asked, How could a ninja know 1,000 jutsus? I only know 3. Even Sasuke-kun knows less than 10. I know Kakashi-sensei is strong, but 1,000 is too much even for him. Naruto was skeptical at first as well of that information, but he trusted that Fujin wouldn't lie to him. He said, There is no doubt about that information. Kakashi-sensei knows 1,000 jutsus. Sasuke was surprised as well, but he decided against questioning whether it was accurate or not. After all, that information was irrelevant to him. What mattered was whether Kakashi would teach them. His mind was focused on the other part of Naruto's story. He muttered to himself softly, Could this really be a test for us? Naruto nodded and repeated Fujin's words. A ninja must look underneath the underneath. Otherwise, why wouldn't Kakashi-sensei teach us his cool jutsus, and why would he make us do lame missions? Sasuke thought that makes sense, but since when did Naruto become so smart? Both Sakura and Naruto looked at Sasuke, who thought for some time. Finally, he said, Well, there is no harm in trying. If this is indeed a test, then we might make him teach us more seriously. Even if it isn't, then it's not like he can make things worse for us. With Sasuke agreeing, Sakura didn't oppose and Naruto was always on board. The three of them decided to think of ways to accomplish either of the two tasks Fujin suggested. After a long discussion and creating several plans, they finally left. Walking towards his home, Confusion was visible on Sasuke's face. He thought, something about this feels off. The biggest question is since when did Naruto become so smart to look through something like this? Yet, I can't deny that his words made complete sense. I guess we'll find out soon. Chapter 549, Focus Fuinjutsu. Fujin completed his morning training routine before taking a small break to decide how to progress further. He analyzed, I have a feeling that I will open the Gate of Limit very soon. I might be able to do it this week itself. Once that is done, I'll have completed my previous training plan of training the Wind Domain, the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, and the 8 Inner Gates technique simultaneously. My Wind Domain is nearly perfect right now. The only improvement I can make is creating vacuum jutsus using the Wind Domain. Though it is possible to improve it even more, it is very difficult. It'll depend more on any inspiration I get in the future or any improvements I experience in other fields. For instance, once I become more knowledgeable about poisons, I could try to mix poisons in the Wind Domain. That might make me more efficient than Sasori at poisoning my enemies. I have mastered the Flying Thunder God Jutsu as well. The only thing I need to work on is increasing the range. I will be able to slowly improve that over time. So, I don't need to assign any time to training it consistently. As for the 8 Inner Gates technique, the Gate of View is several times more difficult than opening all the first 5 inner gates. According to what Guy said, I'll need at least a couple of years to open it. And that is if I focus entirely on it. I guess the Gate of View would be the most I'll be able to open until the 4th Great Ninja War, unless I decide to push the war back by a few years. Regardless, other than my usual morning physical workout routine and sparring with Guy, I don't need to focus more on this technique. That finally opens up my schedule after a long time. Ever since he had quit Anbu, Fujin had been focused on these 3 jutsus. It had been over a year since then. Though he did some other things as well, like creating the 8 trigrams divination seal, investigating Jashin, mastering the mind-reading technique, learning the Raisen Shuriken, and creating the Phantom Haven Society, more than 90% of the time he spent other than sleeping was on training these 3 techniques. Even for someone as disciplined and focused as Fujin, he had started to feel a sense of exhaustion. As a result, he was extremely glad to finally have reached a stage where he could stop focusing on them. Fujin continued analyzing, I can finally train something else. The 2 obvious things that I'll start focusing on soon are spirit transformation jutsu and medical ninjutsu, along with more in-depth knowledge of poisons. I am not sure how long it'll take to master the spirit transformation jutsu. I just hope that it isn't as difficult as the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Hopefully, the fact that I have transmigrated might help. As for the medical ninjutsu and poison, I never loved studying biology and chemistry in my previous life. Granted, it could just be because it wasn't as interesting as in this world and I couldn't get superpowers by studying it. Regardless, even if I can generate enough interest, neither of those 2 things is simple to learn. Despite being excellent academically and having the best medical ninja helping her, Sakura still needed 3 years to reach the level she did. It's not the kind of time I can afford to spend right now. Fortunately, I can use the multi-shadow clone jutsu. Considering how much Yoshi and Isamu have pestered me to become a medical ninja even after my identity as the spectral swordsman was leaked, and I became a council member, I will ensure that I am the last ever student they teach. Anyway, both medical ninjutsu and spirit transformation jutsu can wait for the time being. I have been putting off improving my Fuinjutsu for a long time. It's time to raise my Fuinjutsu to the next level. Fujin looked at his palms. Immediately, the seal imprints that he had on his palm began glowing. Fuinjutsu was something that was very crucial to Fujin's plans. In addition, he was extremely fascinated by the kind of things it could achieve. Fujin thought, even though I am a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster, I am probably the one with the least expertise in seals among all the Grandmasters. When compared with someone like Sasori, who was already making human puppets when he was my age, I'm lacking a lot. Every seal master who becomes a grandmaster spends a lot of time improving the existing seals and creating new ones. There is no question that even Hiruzen, Danzo, and the Sanins are far superior to me in this aspect. Danzo can add his imprint to a seal, making it impossible for anyone else to remove his cursed seals. Creating that arm might have needed a lot of Juinjutsu as well. Hiruzen is likely superior to Danzo in these aspects. Tsunade could create the strength of 100 seal. Orochimaru can store parts of his soul in a seal that applies on others. By comparison, my usage of Fuinjutsu is very basic. I just nullify that weakness to an extent by using a ridiculous amount of seals, deterring anyone who intends to mess with my seals. However, if Hiruzen or Danzo decide to enter my house while I'm not in the village, the seals won't be able to stop them. They'll just need a long time to do so, and they won't be able to cover up the fact that they undid my seals. However, if I improve upon my seals, then they might not be able to do that. Unfortunately, improving seals isn't something that can be done very easily. It takes years, or rather decades, to achieve that even with shadow clones. It's not something I can do in the short term. Unless I can understand what those Jashin seals do, the only way to improve rapidly is by copying what other grandmasters have already achieved, like I copied the properties of Danzo's cursed seals to create the Phantom Seal. So, I'll only focus on two things. The first is to make the seals more usable in battle. The way to do this is simple. I need to create battlefields using seals like how Uchiha Sora did. The only change I need to make is that, instead of needing half an hour to set up the battlefield, I want it to appear in an instant. These battlefields will become my hunting grounds. Other than the battlefields, the other thing to improve upon is the 8 trigrams divination seal. If I can improve it in the way I envision, my strength will improve by leaps and bounds. Unfortunately, this will be very difficult. I can just hope that I can find the perfect combination before the Chunin exams begin. Fujin muttered. Oh well, time to start creating a battlefield. Creating one at the same level as Uchiha Sora will be difficult to start with. I'll begin by creating a stealth-oriented battlefield. Fujin entered his basement. Immediately, 100 shadow clones appeared next to him. Without wasting any time, everyone got to work. 3 days passed. While Fujin became busy with his training again, Kakashi had a few eventful days. Lying in his bed, he had a peculiar expression as he wondered what exactly happened with those three. They suddenly began acting suspiciously. In the last few days, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura had all made moves on him, or rather his book and his mask. They first tried sneaking up on him, which resulted in him grabbing each one of them by the back of their necks like he was grabbing cats. When he asked what they were up to, they all made excuses. Next, they tried distracting him and taking his book. Unsurprisingly, that failed either. Since the straightforward methods didn't work, they became innovative. They began transforming into strangers and animals and running into Kakashi while he was walking in the streets. Unknown to them, Kakashi could perfectly smell their scents. As a result, they never succeeded in their attempts. Regardless, while their initial attempts had been amusing, Kakashi had started to get slightly irritated as they kept increasing the intensity. After thinking for a bit, Kakashi wondered, did someone put them up to it? But who could it be? Lord Hawkage. I don't see why he would do that. It was late at night. Most of the Konoha were asleep. Had Kakashi not been wondering about the recent events, he might have slept as well. To his surprise, someone broke into his house. Chapter 550, Kakashi's Headache. For a moment, Kakashi was shocked. In his entire life, his house had never been broken into by anyone. Even when his father was disgraced and committed suicide, no one actually broke into his house. For a second, Kakashi had raised his alertness to the maximum. Just like the rest of the village, he had raised the security of his house after the root headquarters had blown up. However, that shock and alertness quickly changed into worry as he thought, How can he not know the details of the jutsu he calls his speciality? The shadow clones are good at hiding the main body as they can replicate the appearance, chakra, and even the scent perfectly. If he wants to sneak into my house, shouldn't he at least do something to mask or alter his scent? Sigh, I have so much to teach him. As he was thinking, several figures snuck into his room. They were wearing black clothes along with masks to hide their identity. All of them were surprised to see Kakashi awake and staring back at them. One of them asked in surprise, "Why are you still up?" Another asked, "And why do you wear that mask so late in the night?" Kakashi watched with a deadpan expression. He decided to play along with Naruto and asked, "Who are you people and what are you doing in my house?" One of the clones suddenly realized that and shouted, "Crap, change of plans." Immediately, all the clones exploded into a cloud of smoke, covering Kakashi's house in smoke. Knowing how strong Kakashi was, Naruto didn't see any point in trying to gang up on him with his clones. That would only expose him. Some distance from Kakashi's house, Naruto exclaimed, "Crap, he's still awake. Our plan failed." Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke were hiding while keeping an eye on Kakashi's house and were waiting for their signal to enter Kakashi's house when Naruto's clones failed. Sasuke asked, "Did he know that it was you?" Naruto shook his head and said, "No way, I didn't fight him as you planned." Sasuke said, "Good, let's retreat. We will try again with a new plan." In the blink of an eye, the three genins ran away stealthily. Of course, it wasn't stealthy enough to escape Kakashi's watch. He looked at his students from a distance and thought, so even Sasuke and Sakura were involved, and yet they didn't notice such a simple flaw. Sigh, I wonder how long it'll take them to realize that I can identify their scents. That said, a tired expression appeared on Kakashi's face as he complained, "This is too troublesome. Will they keep bothering me like this all the time?" Seeing how full of energy Naruto was, Kakashi understood that he wouldn't get any rest until he stopped them. He decided, I need to get to the root of this change. Someone is influencing this change for sure. Also, these three have too much energy. I'll borrow some of Guy's tricks. That should be enough to keep them obedient. Also, Kakashi looked around but didn't feel anything odd. He opened his Sharingan and inspected his surroundings again. Yet he didn't notice anyone. He muttered to himself, "Weird. I have been feeling like someone is keeping an eye on me for the past few days. Yet I don't see anyone whenever I investigate. It shouldn't be those genins. They can't hide this well." Sai, who is playing games with me, after escaping some distance away, the trio gathered together again. Naruto complained, "Man, this is so annoying. Why didn't Kakashi-sensei sleep yet? And he wears his mask even when he is in bed." Sakura was surprised and muttered, "It's almost as if that mask is a part of his body." Sasuke ignored their complaints and said, "It was unfortunate that he didn't sleep. Now he'll be ready if we try this again. We will have to think of another way." All three of them began thinking but couldn't come up with anything. Seeing that, Sasuke said, "Let's think about it on our own. We will discuss our ideas while waiting for him tomorrow." Naruto and Sakura nodded. The team finally dispersed. Uncharacteristically, Fujin was still awake. Usually, he'd be asleep by this hour, but this day he was engrossed in his training. A smile appeared on his face as he looked at the new seal imprint on his palm. He was about to test it when he suddenly received a set of memories. A giggle escaped his lips as he thought, "Not bad. Not bad at all. Those brats broke into Kakashi's house, hee. I wonder what he's thinking right now." For the last few days, Fujin would always receive memories from his shadow clone that trailed Naruto and company. Those memories kept him very entertained despite training with so many clones. Fujin turned his attention back to the seal on his hand and thought, anyway, time to test this. Fujin slammed his hand on the ground. In an instant, a new seal appeared on the floor of his basement. In the blink of an eye, several dozen seals appeared at some spots in the basement. Fujin looked at his clones and dispelled all but one. The remaining clone left the basement and appeared on the floor above it. He extended his chakra field into the basement. A smile appeared on his face as he muttered, "Amazing! I can't sense anything inside the basement." He stopped using his chakra field and instead activated the space-time sensing technique. He realized, looks like it is useless against space-time techniques though. The seals that I know are pretty much useless against space-time techniques. Then again, I haven't run into anyone else who knows such seals either. I guess seals that restrict space-time techniques haven't been created in this world yet, unless the Uzumaki clan or the Jashin cult knew them. If they don't, then it might be safe to say that there are none, though that ain't necessarily a bad thing. At least no one will be able to stop my flying thunder god. The only shame is that I won't have a way to stop that broken Mangekyo ability. I guess working with Kakashi would be the only way to deal with Obito. Still, I should visit Uzushiagakure sometime in the future to see if any secrets are still hidden in the village. Though unlikely as that village was thoroughly plundered and scavenged several times, there is still some chance considering that the very thing they specialized in was seals. Perhaps taking an Uzumaki there might help in finding the hidden stuff. Fujin's clone stopped analyzing and sent the memories back to Fujin, who was waiting in the basement. On receiving the memories, Fujin thought, great, it works as I want. It seems like I can make a complete battlefield in this way, though making the seal imprint for it will be far more complicated. 3 days ago, after deciding to make a stealth battlefield, Fujin decided to get down to work. The first task that he needed to do was to create the battlefield normally. That was the easy part. Fujin and his clones brainstormed and came up with a structure of the battlefield with seals placed in the right places within a few hours. The stealth battlefield was different from the battlefield that Uchiha Sora had created to deal with the Jashinists. The one Sora created was to trap the enemies and prevent them from running while giving Sora and his allies the initiative to attack and defend at will. However, what Fujin created focused solely on the stealth aspect. No sensor, no matter how good, would be able to detect that someone was in that battlefield as long as he didn't step into it. Only Fuinjutsu Grandmasters would be able to detect that something was off. However, it didn't have any other capabilities, meaning that the battlefield didn't assist Fujin in attack, defense, or even in trapping the enemy. The reason why Fujin created such a simple battlefield was the second task. It was very difficult, and Fujin was sure that he would be the first Fuinjutsu Grandmaster to do something like this. The difficult part was that Fujin would have to condense the entire battlefield into one small seal imprint. The seal imprints, though convenient, were traditionally used to create only one seal quickly. However, the battlefield that Fujin wanted to create had several dozen stealth seals of various types. As a result, the seal imprint he would be creating was a seal imprint that consisted of several dozen seal imprints within it. And each of those several dozen seal imprints had to be placed at the proper place inside the main seal imprint. If Fujin made a single error in the distances between each seal, the seal imprint would fail in creating the battlefield. Most of Fujin's time was spent creating that imprint. He and his clones failed several times. However, he had managed to create it. Fujin looked at it and thought, this stealth battlefield will act as a prototype for my main battlefield. Main battlefield is kind of a boring name. I'll call it the Fuin battlefield instead. Anyway, I'll begin working on it tomorrow. Fujin decided to call it a night. The next day, before he could begin his training, an Anbu appeared and called Fujin into Hiruzen's office. Chapter 551, Naruto. At around 6 in the morning, Team 7 gathered in the training ground. Well, all except their sensei. Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke all had a sleepy face. Naruto said, "We barely got to sleep last night. I am so sleepy." Since they had been up late at night to sneak up on Kakashi, they only got a few hours of sleep. Sakura yawned and said, "Luckily Sensei won't be here for at least another 3 hours. We can take a nap here." Sasuke didn't say anything but agreed with her. The three of them sat with their backs resting against trees and closed their eyes. Did you come here for training or sleeping?" It had barely been a minute since the three of them closed their eyes when they heard Kakashi's voice. All three woke up in an instant. Sakura looked at Kakashi and shouted internally of all the days he had to come early today. Shanaro, Sasuke wondered, does he know that it was us last night? Naruto watched nervously as well. Kakashi looked at his three students and said, enough lazing around. Today, we will have a special training session. On hearing the word special training session, the eyes of the three genins lit up. Naruto thought, did we prove ourselves to him? Fujin was right as always. Sasuke thought, finally, we can get some real training. Naruto excitedly jumped and asked, will you teach us your special jutsus, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi said in confusion, special jutsus? Well, the training will be very special. All three of you will grow strong rapidly with it, so we will start right away. Despite their sleep-deprived state, the three genins were very excited. Unfortunately, the excitement didn't last very long. Sakura's excitement died 15 seconds after Kakashi's special training session started. Sasuke's excitement died after 10 minutes, while Naruto's excitement nearly lasted for half an hour. The training Kakashi put them through even surpassed the intensity of training that Guy put his students through. None of them had the physiques to endure such training. When Kakashi noticed Naruto running out of gas, he said, the warm-up is over. Now we will begin the real training. This time, none of the three genins felt any excitement. Instead, horror was setting in. True to his words, the trio that had been harassing him for 3 days were being put through hell. While Naruto and his teammates entered hell, Fujin woke and freshened up. As usual, he sent out a shadow clone to enjoy the entertainment. Unknown to him, he had missed out on some very entertaining scenes. By the time his clone reached, all three genins had passed out. Regardless, his mind quickly began thinking about the Fuin battlefield. He analyzed, I only used 83 seals in the stealth battlefield. And most of the seals were similar in nature. However, the Fuin battlefield will be a lot more complex. I have to make it strong enough to at least hold any non-Jinchuriki rank S ninja. If it can't do even that much, then what's the use of technique? I can already neutralize threats weaker than that even without using my wind jutsus or any forbidden jutsus. A normal barrier created with seals can't hold a rank S ninja. The barriers I integrate into Fuin battlefield will need to have the feature of strengthening with the help of my chakra. As long as I can do that, there would be no way to escape other than reverse. As long as I can do that, there would be no way to escape other than reverse summoning jutsu. Maybe Anoki's dust release might be able to destroy it. Sasano could be another variable. However, the rest of the rank S ninjas will be trapped without being able to escape, giving me a chance to kill them. Oh well, I'll do my physical workout and then start creating this. Fujin's bell rang. An Anbu had arrived and informed Fujin that Hiruzen had asked for his presence. Fujin followed him while wondering, did he call me to give me the scroll of spirit transformation jutsu, or is he ready to move the orphans here? When Fujin reached, Hiruzen ordered his Anbu guards to leave the two of them alone. With all the seals activated, Hiruzen handed Fujin a scroll and said, the details of the spirit transformation jutsu are in there. However, be careful while practicing the jutsu. The act of releasing your soul from your body is extremely dangerous. If you make a mistake, then it can injure you, and I can't estimate the degree of the injury. Once your soul is out, your body will be vulnerable. If someone makes a move on you and damages your unprotected body, you'll die. Kato Dan, the one who created this jutsu, died in this manner during the war. Always leave sufficient shadow clones behind to take care of your body. That way, you'll be aware of the danger and might be able to make it back in time. Fujin nodded. He understood the dangers involved while learning that jutsu. However, he wasn't much worried about leaving his body vulnerable using that jutsu. After all, he knew the Flying Thunder God jutsu. His clones could escape with his body with rather ease even if someone found him. Fujin asked curiously, I will be careful. That said, can shadow clones use this technique? Hiruzen shook his head and said, no. Even though shadow clones have a part of your spirit that returns to your body after they are dispelled or destroyed, it is extremely minute. No clone can use this technique. Even if you somehow manage to utilize this technique with that little spirit, the clone will be dispelled and it will return to you forcefully. Fujin sighed and muttered, "That's a shame. Anyway," he handed a few scrolls to Hiruzen and said, "These have Sasori's puppets. I decided to keep 15 for myself. The remaining 49 are here." Hiruzen nodded and took the scrolls while thinking, it is difficult for a puppet master to handle several puppets at the same time. Generally, 3 is the limit. Assuming that they need a couple as backup, these should be enough to equip the 5 I have in mind. The rest will be used to research and improve Konoha's knowledge of creating puppets. Normally, I'd have asked Danzo to handle this research. However, thinking about Danzo, the headaches of a few months ago resurfaced. Hiruzen decided, though I can't be sure whether Danzo had any hand in the death of the Root Ninjas and the destruction of the Root headquarters, there is no doubt that a lot of things don't add up. I can't clear him so quickly just because he suffered from that incident. Not to mention, if I let him get his hands on this forbidden technique, Danzo will surely create a large number of human puppets. In the worst case, he might even use Konoha ninjas for this purpose, and I won't be able to do much because it is very easy to keep these puppets hidden. I shouldn't allow him to get his hands on this technique unless we are at a war and in a tough spot. I will create another unit for researching such forbidden techniques. Hiruzen looked at Fujin and said, "There is another reason that I called you here. The construction of the buildings and facilities around your house is finally completed. I am planning to move the orphans there tonight." Fujin nodded and said, "Sure, no issue." That said, I received a request some time ago. Hiruzen was surprised. He wondered since when did Fujin start accepting requests, and who is rich enough to ask for his help. He asked, "What is it?" Fujin smiled and said, "Naruto asked whether he could move in along with other orphans." Immediately, a thoughtful expression appeared on Hiruzen's face. He thought, so he only accepts requests that involve giving me a headache. I know that he has been teaching Naruto for some time, but Naruto moving into his territory will be a political matter. Naruto was the only Jinchuriki in Konoha. As a result, several clans and factions in Konoha wanted him under their control. Considering that he was an orphan, almost every clan, including the Uchiha clan, had offered to take him under their wing. In fact, even Hiruzen wanted to take Naruto into the Sarutobi clan. So did Danzo, who wanted him in the Root. Since everyone's interests clashed and everyone restricted each other, Naruto eventually ended up alone. No one had asked to take him in recent times other than Danzo, so Fujin's statement came as a surprise to Hiruzen. Hiruzen analyzed, since I am placing several orphans under him, he does have a good reason to justify Naruto moving in with them. Not to mention, he is already on good terms with him, so it will be good for Naruto. However, it will cause political clashes. It is difficult to say how the clans would see this. Danzo might even use this opportunity to say that I am trying to take control of Naruto through Fujin. The only good thing is that Fujin doesn't have an established faction yet, so others might not see it as a threat. Regardless, it will be a headache for me. Chapter 552, Warnings. Hiruzen asked, "Will Naruto be moving into your house?" Fujin shook his head and answered, "No. He just feels that he might make friends more easily with the orphans. If there is no issue on your end, then he will move in only if he gets along well with them and will be living alongside them." Hiruzen sighed internally. He makes a very strong case as usual. How will I come out looking good if I refuse Naruto the opportunity to make friends and get along with the ones who might not discriminate against him? Hiruzen asked, "Are you sure it'll be a good idea? Don't forget that Naruto is a Jinchuriki and hosts the nine-tailed beast. If he loses control, then the orphans and even you might be at risk." Fujin raised an eyebrow and said, "If he is going to lose control, then he might as well lose control next to a rank S Fuinjutsu Grandmaster and a bunch of Anbu trainees instead of in the middle of the city where civilians live." For a second, Hiruzen was left speechless. He didn't expect to be countered so quickly and without a shred of mercy. Despite the shamelessness running through his veins, even Hiruzen couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Of course, it wasn't visible on his face. In fact, even Fujin wondered what happened to him today. Is he sick, or did he fall on his head in the last 3 days? This is the first time I ever saw him say something so dumb. While Fujin loved messing with Hiruzen, it was generally because of how difficult Hiruzen made it to mess with him. As a result, he couldn't help but be surprised by the excuse Hiruzen was trying to use. Hiruzen faked a cough and said, "Of course, I just wanted you to be aware. Even though Lord Fourth's seal is very secure, we should always take precautions." Fujin just stared at Hiruzen, making it obvious that Hiruzen's half-assed attempt at covering up what he said wasn't working. Hiruzen added, "That said, while I don't have any issue, Naruto is the village's only Jinchuriki, so his safety is of utmost importance. In addition, other council members will need to be informed as well. I will give you the answer a few days later." Fujin nodded and said, "Well, even though my compounds are on the outskirts of the village, safety shouldn't be a concern as I'll apply seals on the compounds soon. My compounds will become one of the safest places in the village. The Anbu can continue keeping an eye on him from the shadows. If needed, one of the underground bases in the compounds could be used as an Anbu base." All the Kiri orphans that would be moving into his compounds were Anbu trainees. In addition, a few experienced Anbu would also be staying in his compounds to train those orphans. So it didn't make much of a difference to Fujin if a few more Anbu came in. Besides, even at such a close distance, no one would be able to spy inside his house. Fujin continued, "As for the other council members, I don't see any reason why anyone would have an issue, though if they do, just let me know." Hiruzen was surprised. He asked, "Oh, what will you do?" Fujin smiled and replied, "Why would I do anything? I'll just ask Naruto to prank their houses. The kid hasn't been pranking much since he graduated. Though," Fujin put up a thoughtful face and continued, "I might have to discuss this with Kakashi as Naruto is his student. However, he should agree as this will be a good training for Naruto." Hiruzen looked at Fujin with a dumbfounded expression. He thought, he isn't even planning to hide the fact that he was behind Naruto creating havoc in the village. Not to mention, Naruto has learnt the multi-shadow clone jutsu. If he pranks now, Hiruzen immediately understood what terror Naruto could cause if he continued with his old ways. Normally, he would have stopped the person who suggested it, but he had a feeling that he would lose if he tried to debate with Fujin. He said, "Well, that might be a bit extreme. Anyway, don't worry. I don't think anyone will oppose it too much. I'll handle it. I'll see you later tonight." Fujin nodded and disappeared from the office. As he left the office, a puzzled expression appeared on his face. He muttered to himself, "What a weird day. Hiruzen says something dumb. Kakashi is somehow already in the training grounds, and his 3 students are instead the ones sleeping. Did the sun rise from the west today, or did I transmigrate into another parallel universe?" While Fujin was chatting with Hiruzen, his clone had sent him the memories to inform him about the situation with Kakashi's squad. The sudden change had surprised him. He anticipated Kakashi making them wait for 6 hours instead of 3 hours due to being annoyed by them. He never imagined that Kakashi would do the opposite. Fujin decided, "Well, whatever. I'll continue constructing the Fuin battlefield. Unlike the stealth battlefield, this will be very complicated. I'll need a few days to just plan the design. The only reference I have is the battlefield Sora created. And I'll also need to consider what I should do when making improvements to the Fuin battlefield in the future. Will I just have to make a new seal imprint? Or can I somehow modify the current seal imprint elsewhere?" Kakashi looked at his 3 students, all of whom had passed out at some point during the intense training. Sakura lasted the least with just over 30 minutes. Sasuke lasted for over 1¼ hours. Naruto lasted 30 minutes more than him. Kakashi analyzed, "Weird, I didn't feel anyone looking at me earlier. However, I can feel it now. That said, I still can't find who it is. There is no scent, no chakra signature, and it doesn't feel like Lord Hawkage's crystal ball either. I will keep an eye on these three to check if someone is influencing them. Anyway, it looks like these three need some training to improve their stamina. Sakura's stamina is too low even for a genin. Sasuke is better, but this isn't enough. Naruto is helped by his Uzumaki genes and the 9 tails sealed inside him. However, for someone who is aided by such factors, his stamina is quite low. This training will be the new normal for them. Since the three had slept for enough time, Kakashi woke all of them up. The three genins were still extremely tired. They quickly drank some water. Kakashi said in a disappointed tone, "I didn't expect that you three wouldn't be able to last a single training session." Kakashi shook his head, displaying his disappointment further. Sakura immediately argued, "But sensei, the training was so intense. How are we supposed to keep doing it for a long time?" Kakashi stared into her eyes and said, "The fights between ninjas are far more intense. You will burn stamina at a much quicker rate. If you lose your focus for a moment, you'll be dead. You think your opponent will stop after half an hour just because you lack stamina?" Sakura immediately went quiet while a frown appeared on Sasuke's face. He imagined facing Itachi and lacking the stamina to fight him. Naruto said, "But sensei, I lasted the longest. Shouldn't I be fine?" Kakashi looked at him and said, "Your main method of fighting is shadow clones." Kakashi looked at him and said, "Your main method of fighting is shadow clones. In a fight, you'll lose your stamina the quickest. It is even more important for you to improve your stamina." Kakashi's words shut him up as well. However, it was what he said next that horrified them. Forming his usual eye smile, Kakashi said, "You three couldn't last your early morning training session. I hope you do better in your pre-afternoon training session, which begins now." Sakura immediately complained, "But sensei, we haven't eaten anything." Naruto added, "Yes, sensei, we can't train on empty stomachs." Kakashi maintained his eye smile and asked, "Do you think your enemies will give you lunch breaks in the middle of the war?" "We begin now. Also, if any of you fall asleep this time, I'll be waking you up with the 1,000 years of death jutsu." All three genins shivered on hearing that threat. None of them wanted to experience that. Not giving them any further break, Kakashi started the next round of training, which continued until noon. All three got too tired at some point and couldn't continue the training, but no one dared to pass out and everyone kept a close eye on Kakashi. At noon, the trio quickly ate the lunches they had packed. Not 1 second after they were done eating, Kakashi took them to the Hokage's office to accept a mission. The exhausted kids unwillingly followed Kakashi in their half-dead states. Even Hiruzen was surprised when he saw them. He couldn't help but wonder, what did Kakashi do with them? And why are they so on guard? "Lord Hokage." Hearing Kakashi, Hiruzen said, "Madam Shijumi's cat has escaped again. Your mission is to catch and bring the cat back." Chapter 553, Jiraiya's Dream Jutsu. "Not the damn cat again," Naruto shouted in horror. Both Sakura and Sasuke sighed in agreement. Their bodies were already aching to the extreme. They didn't want to chase the cat around the village for hours in that state. In fact, they didn't even have any energy to do any mission. All the three of them wanted was to return to their homes and sleep until the next morning. Unfortunately, Kakashi didn't give them any choice. Hiruzen was surprised to see the three genins accept a rank D mission without asking for difficult missions for once. Fujin received the memories from his clone and chuckled while thinking, "Guess Guy will be proud of Kakashi. Maybe I should inform him the next time we spar. Oh well." His expression became serious as he clenched his fists and exerted his strength. Gate of opening, open. Gate of healing, open. Gate of life, open. In one go, Fujin opened the first 3 inner gates. His skin turned red, his pupils disappeared, all the hair on his body stood up, and bulging veins appeared all over his body. At the same time, a high amount of chakra was flowing around his body. Gate of pain, open. Fujin exerted his body further and opened the 4th inner gate. True to its name, Pain spread through his body as his muscles were affected. Fujin gritted his teeth and muttered, "Here goes nothing." Despite the pain, Fujin closed his eyes and focused on the chakra point in his abdomen. In an instant, a large amount of chakra bombarded the gate of limit. Fujin kept up the bombardment for half a minute. Despite the steady increase in the pain his muscles were feeling, the bombardment only became more fierce. The gate of limit couldn't withstand it and snapped open. In an instant, Fujin felt a massive increase in his chakra reserves. Despite the pain, he could feel that his body was far stronger. Fujin didn't move and instead just paid attention to his body. He thought, "It's incredible that this body can generate so much chakra and improve my physical abilities to this extent. My chakra levels are more than 10 times what I normally have." He sighed as he analyzed further. "It's a shame that this chakra is in such a berserk state. If it was calm like my normal chakra and I could use it for ninjutsu, I could have been able to injure a tailed beast." Fujin finally closed his inner gates. His breathing immediately became rougher and he felt an immense hunger. However, Fujin wasn't very concerned. He analyzed, "With the gate of limit opened, I can stop training the 8 inner gates technique as well. The gate of joy is just too difficult to open. Even if I train my body with the same intensity for a few years, there is no guarantee that I'll be able to open the gate of joy. Instead, it'll only get more difficult as my body grows stronger." From what Guy said, fighting against strong opponents is an important factor from here onwards. Only when in grave danger will the body be able to put enough pressure on the gate of joy to open it. However, Fujin had a helpless expression. Unlike Guy, who was much weaker than Fujin when he opened the gate of limit, Fujin was already a fearsome rank S ninja. The number of ninjas that could threaten him and were alive could be counted with fingers. Fujin muttered to himself, "The only way I could get into such a fight is if I fight with Anoki or some of the Akatsuki members. Or maybe by using Akuro's disguise to fight with Hiruzen, Jiraiya, and Tsunade. Still, all of them are far more experienced than me and no weaker than me as long as I don't use the Flying Thunder God." Fujin fell into deep thought. After a couple of minutes he decided, "Irrespective of whether I open the gate of joy or not, there is no harm in engaging in such battles. Though I have fought a lot for my age, the majority of my battles were against weaker ninjas from minor villages. The number of times I fought a rank S ninja is just too low. Compared to these guys who fought regularly during the Great Ninja Wars, I lack heavily in the experience department. Oh well, once the range of my Flying Thunder God Jutsu increases, I'll begin finding excuses to fight them. After all, why should I refuse their help to make myself stronger? Since they aren't doing anything important, they might as well help me a bit." Having made his decision, Fujin decided to go to Ikaraku to fill himself up. En route, he saw Naruto and his teammates chasing after a cat. Noticing their sluggish movements, Fujin commented, "I don't think they can get up from their beds tomorrow. Even Guy isn't this brutal. Oh well, it's none of my concern." Completely ignoring the fact that he was the reason for their current state, Fujin shamelessly went into Ikaraku and began treating his stomach. In his basement, 4 large sheets of paper were placed on the floor at some distance from each other. Surrounding each paper were a dozen shadow clones. While Fujin was training his body, his clones had been working on the design for the Fuin battlefield. Since the design had to be created properly, Fujin was aware that it would take some time. It didn't make any difference whether it was he who was designing the battlefield or his clones. Hence, Fujin left it all to his clones while he began focusing on the other things. After filling his stomach and returning home, Fujin opened the scroll that Hiruzen had given him. Understanding the importance of theory in this jutsu, Fujin read it carefully a few times. After a while he sighed, "Kato Dan, what an impressive talent. From what Hiruzen informed me about him, he specialized in fire, wind, earth, yin, and yang release. In addition, his chakra reserves were very high as well. I wonder if this was a reason why Hiruzen didn't oppose much while giving this jutsu." It might be possible that all he did was just act so that he could get as many puppets from me as he could. After all, in terms of chakra natures, I and Dan are quite similar as Hiruzen doesn't know about my lightning release. That said, I wonder why his chakra reserves were absurdly high. Now that I think about it, he did help Tsunade recover her entire chakra, including the chakra stored in her seal in the last war. Being able to fill up her seal is nuts. Does the spirit transformation jutsu help increase the chakra reserves? However, it could have also been due to the Edo Tensei. Oh well, I'll wonder about it later. Coming back to the spirit transformation jutsu, it is remarkable to be able to control the soul. A normal person, actually, even most rank S ninjas, can't even feel their soul, let alone control it freely. Just to be able to sense my soul, I'll need remarkable control over yin release. By extension, my control over yang release has to be remarkable as well. Though my current yang release and yin release aren't bad, I'll have to improve them significantly to just begin training this jutsu. Once they improve, I will first have to sense my soul and differentiate it from my body. The next step will be detaching it from my body, allowing me to roam freely. In this form, I'll be invulnerable to normal chakra and energy. Even nature energy won't be able to harm me. Unless someone develops attacks that specifically target the soul, I won't be harmed. That said, I could still be trapped within high-level barriers. Anyway, the last step would be learning combat skills with my spirit. The basic way of attacking with spirit is by entering the enemy's body and damaging his spirit, or better, completely collapsing it. Straightforward and brutally efficient. In addition, I can also take control of my enemy's body temporarily. I can also use this technique to communicate or transfer my chakra to an ally. Another important feature is the broken passive tracking ability. If I set someone as my target, my soul will be able to find its way all the way to him even if I don't know where my target is. I wonder if this jutsu was purposefully kept away from Jiraiya. Fujin was genuinely surprised that Jiraiya didn't do everything he could to learn this jutsu. It seemed like the perfect jutsu for him. Fujin continued reading the scroll over and over to ensure that he didn't miss anything. He noted down all the doubts he had as Hiruzen would be paying a visit later in the day. The remainder of the day passed without any incident. Kakashi planned on training the kids once again after the mission was completed. However, he could see that they were completely drained. They didn't make a single move on him during the mission. As a result, he let them go home early. Later that night, Hiruzen arrived at Fujin's residence along with the orphans from Kiri. Chapter 554, 50 Years More. Sensing a bunch of chakra signatures coming towards his house, Fujin muttered, "I guess Hiruzen is finally here." Fujin flickered outside his house. The construction around his house was completed. The 4 plots adjacent to his land, each 2,500 meters in size, had been incorporated to create a compound, and a wall had been constructed around the entire property. Fujin's house was at the centermost plot near the front. The vacant area behind his house now had 2 buildings. One of them was the training facility. It was as good as the Anbu training facilities, though they were a bit smaller and lacked elemental training rooms. The other building was for any Anbu stationed in his compounds. The plots just to the right and left of Fujin's house had several small buildings. They were for the Kiri orphans to live in. The last 2 plots, which were farthest from Fujin's house, were left for future expansion. In order to not leave them empty, parks and playgrounds were constructed there. Fujin thought, not bad. Though it is rather simple, it seems like Hiruzen asked the constructors to maintain consistency with my house. Instead of overshadowing my house or looking pale in comparison, they are in sync with my house, making it quite a good sight. Though it makes my house stand out a bit. Oh well, it's not like anyone would dare intrude on my house for that reason. A few seconds later, Hiruzen appeared in front of Fujin. Behind him were a few Anbu ninjas and the 134 orphans from the Land of Water. Hiruzen looked at Fujin and nodded, indicating that it was time. Fujin looked at the kids. As he had expected, almost all of them had emotional expressions. Only a few looked around curiously. Hiruzen had already explained to them that they would be living in Fujin's compounds. Hiruzen introduced Fujin to them before the Anbu began assigning them the rooms to live in. While they were busy, Fujin asked, "Are all of them from the land of water? Also, how many have awakened Kekkei Genkai and how many have bloodlines?" Hiruzen looked at Fujin and thought, so he has already connected the dots between these kids and the ones Renjiro brought back. Hiruzen wasn't surprised. It was rather easy to connect. He nodded and said, "Yes. 5 of them have unlocked Kekkei Genkai. We have confirmed that another 14 have bloodlines. As for the rest, it is difficult to say. As you know, the Mizukage faction has been hunting everyone with Kekkei Genkai. So, several people changed their surnames while going into hiding. It is difficult to say if some of these kids are among them. Regardless, their talent is still very high, so it isn't an issue." Fujin agreed and asked softly, "Are you planning on creating more clans in the village?" While getting slightly more than 100 talented kids who might become jounins in the future was something no village would say no to. It wasn't something that the major villages would fight for. After all, the villages received talented kids every year. However, most of them would die even before they became jounins. Some would lose their drive and would never reach that level. So, it wasn't a big deal. However, it was a whole different thing when Kekkei Genkai and bloodlines were involved. It presented villages with an opportunity to raise an entirely new force. In addition, it was much easier to become elite jounins if you have Kekkei Genkai. It even made becoming rank S slightly easier. Hiruzen glared at Fujin and said, "Some things are better left unsaid. Don't talk openly about such things." But yes. Over the next half-century, we can create several new clans. It'll increase the special units that our village will have considerably. Hiruzen chuckled and added, "I'll probably be long dead by then. It'll be something you guys would need to handle. Since you are the one overseeing them, you will have a major role to play." Fujin looked at Hiruzen and wondered, why does it feel like he wants me to take over the Hokage seat? Fujin looked back at the kids and replied casually, "Don't worry, Grandpa. I'm sure you'll still be the Hokage 50 years later. The people of Konoha would love to see their beloved and benevolent Lord Hokage complete a century." That immediately earned him a glare from Hiruzen. Fujin felt it, but he didn't look at him and instead just kept watching the orphans casually. He knew exactly what Hiruzen's thoughts would be. Hiruzen cursed in his mind, "What the hell is the issue with this village? Why does everyone want me to continue as the Hokage? Can't I retire? He wants me to continue being Hokage until I become 120 years old. Is there a reason why only troublemakers want to become the Hokage?" Hiruzen almost wanted to lash out in frustration. Unfortunately, he couldn't. Not to mention, Fujin didn't even look in his direction and instead pretended to be curious about the kids. Hiruzen could only bitterly bottle up his thoughts. He sighed internally while thinking, "I failed to convince Jiraiya to take the seat. Tsunade won't accept either. Minato's batch unfortunately didn't have any other candidate. However, I am not missing my chance this time." He looked at Fujin and thought, both Fujin and Kakashi are excellent candidates. Considering how easily Fujin dealt with Sasori, he isn't too far away from my level. Though he won't be able to win against me at least for a few more years, he might be able to hold back and retreat successfully from Ai and Onoki. Kakashi, unfortunately, has been lagging behind. Still, even he can be considered as a rank S ninja. At the very least, he should be able to fight against Rasa. Considering how troublesome his students are and what troubles they will attract, they might just inspire him to train a bit more seriously. I'll wait for 3 more years and retire irrespective of whether someone wants to become the Hokage or not. That should be sufficient time for Kakashi's strength to become more formidable and for Fujin to gain some fame that he can actually speak about. If they are reluctant, I'll use Danzo to push either of them on the seat. A slight surprise appeared on Hiruzen's face as he realized Now that I think about it, he has done a great job at hiding his biggest achievements. No one except Akatsuki knows that he was the one to kill Juzo. Similarly, no one except me knows that he was the one to steal Sasori's puppets. Even his fights against Iwa are only known to them. As for Suna, once again only me and Shikaku know. Fujin felt that the way Hiruzen was staring at him had changed. He looked at him and saw a peculiar expression on Hiruzen's face. He asked, "What are you thinking about?" Hiruzen shook his head and said, "Nothing important." Fujin looked at him with a doubtful expression. Seeing that Hiruzen didn't intend to speak about it, Fujin began asking Hiruzen on how to handle the kids. While he guided a few earlier and had made arrangements for kids in Phantom Haven society, he truly didn't have much experience in this aspect. Thankfully, Hiruzen already had a basic plan prepared. He explained it to Fujin. After explaining everything, Hiruzen concluded, "In short, you don't need to do much. The Anbu I deploy will take care of their training. For other basic needs, civilians will be employed. Since you don't have any way to earn funds, the village will be handling the expenses. You only need to watch over the kids. If they have an issue that they or their teachers can't resolve, then they will be approaching you. In addition, if someone catches your eye, feel free to guide them. If you want to, you can even create and lead a squad. The only important thing is to ensure that no one knows about Kekkei Genkai users among the kids. Even the clan leaders and other elders are oblivious to this fact. While I don't need to hide this from them, seeing how long they take to realize this will give us an idea of how long other villages will take to suspect us of having pulled something like this off." Fujin nodded. He didn't doubt the fact that other villages would be pissed on seeing Konoha gaining so many new Kekkei Genkais. There was little doubt that there would be several assassination attempts on them. What Hiruzen's words implied was that Fujin would have to be the one to deter the other villages from doing something like that. However, Fujin wasn't very worried. After all, Konoha would be at its strongest by then. Even if things didn't happen as he remembered, Konoha would still be at the top in regards to rank S battle power. With the two Sanins, Fujin, Kakashi, Guy, and Naruto, that'd be 6 rank S ninjas even without considering Danzo. That wasn't something other villages could match. Of course, Fujin couldn't say those things out loud. He nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'll handle it. Besides, it has been some time since I butted my head against the other great villages. Anyway, show me the ones with Kekkei Genkai and Bloodline. I'd keep a closer eye on them." Hiruzen chuckled thinking about what had happened when Fujin previously butt his head against other villages and informed him about the kids who had the Kekkei Genkai and the Bloodlines. The information that Hiruzen gave him caused Fujin to be surprised. Chapter 555. Categorizing Kekkei Genkai 1. As Fujin had expected, there were kids from the Yuki clan among the orphans. In fact, more than half of the ones whose bloodlines had been identified were from the Yuki clan. 3 of the 5 kids with Kekkei Genkai were from the Yuki clan as well and had ice release. It was the other 2 Kekkei Genkai that surprised Fujin. Neither were native to the land of water. One had the storm release while the other had the scorch release. The Kekkei Genkai Fujin felt that he was most likely to learn. Fujin thought, weird. Why did these 2 Kekkei Genkai appear in the land of water? On second thought, it isn't too strange. After all, no matter how much a clan tries to keep their bloodline in their clan, there will always be a few in every generation who'd sleep around. Actually, it is a surprise that the genes aren't that well spread despite existing for centuries. Regardless, Danzo is undoubtedly extremely lucky to get his hands on these 2, or rather was lucky. Guess I should be glad for his luck. It might just give me the inspiration I need. Anyway, there aren't any kids from the Sakai or the Terumi clan as I expected. After all, both their clans are still quite strong and are actively fighting against the Mizukage faction. There aren't any from the Kaguya clan either. Though there are 3 from the Hazuki clan, that clan doesn't have a Kekkei Genkai. Their clan is famous for their secret technique, but these 3 kids don't know that secret technique. So that makes them no different from any other kid. While Fujin and Hiruzen were conversing, all the kids were assigned their rooms. 2 kids were placed in each room. As a part of Root's training, Danzo had ensured that each kid had a best friend. Hiruzen naturally knew what Danzo would have eventually done. However, even though the kids were no longer en route, Hiruzen didn't see any harm in letting the friendships continue and become stronger. If anything, it was beneficial. Seeing that everyone had settled, Hiruzen said, "Fujin, I'll leave the rest to you. If you have any doubts or require assistance, you can contact Hamura and Koharu. Both have more experience than me in handling such matters." Fujin looked at Hiruzen skeptically. While he didn't doubt their skills, there was no way Hiruzen would lose to either of them in these matters. Fortunately for Hiruzen, Fujin didn't mind bothering them as well. He nodded and asked, "What about Naruto?" Hiruzen answered, "I talked with the clan leaders and the elders. They don't have an issue with him moving in here. However, as you said, only do so if he gets along with these kids." Hiruzen sighed internally as he recalled, to think that after so many years of unsuccessfully trying to put Naruto in a better place, the answer was so simple. Without Danzo's influence, it is much easier to get things done, though Fujin was a huge factor as well. Even though most clan leaders sympathized with Naruto's situation, no clan wanted to see any other clan get a huge advantage by gaining control of the Jinchuriki. Under such circumstances, he would have normally been placed with the Hokage. However, the Sarutobi clan already had a very large influence in Konoha and the Land of Fire. Hiruzen occupied the Hokage seat. His elder son was the leader of Anbu, and his younger son was one of the 12 guardians of the daimyo. In addition, due to the consistent wars, the Anbu forces Hiruzen controlled had grown stronger than most clans. Consistent wars, the Anbu forces Hiruzen controlled had grown stronger than most clans. Not to mention, Hiruzen had a deep influence inside other clans as well due to leading the village for so long. Even in such a case, they would have come up with some arrangement for Naruto. Unfortunately, with Danzo working in the background and fanning the flames, that became impossible. Without a strong ninja, like Jiraiya or Tsunade stepping in to break the impasse and taking the responsibility, the situation stayed the same despite none of the involved parties being satisfied. Hiruzen continued thinking, "Unlike me, Fujin doesn't have much influence. Even though he has these kids under him now and represents the highest number of ninjas in the council, his real influence isn't that high. After all, he isn't their leader, and there is no blood relation between him and the others. Where his actual influence lies is his strength and abilities. Combined with the fact that the clan leaders were sympathetic about Naruto's situation, there was surprisingly no opposition from them. Hiruzen was happy with how easily this matter was resolved. He was expecting Fujin to be happy as well, but Fujin just plainly replied, "That's good. I'll introduce Naruto to them the next time he shows up." Hiruzen was a bit surprised, but what he didn't know was that Fujin was sighing internally. Fujin thought, "What a bummer. I was hoping that someone would oppose it. I could have got some entertainment in making them change their decision in a non-violent way. Sigh, I need a good fight soon. Reiga, though decent, wasn't good enough. He couldn't even force me to use my wind jutsus. It's a shame that it is so difficult to get a fair fight with any rank S ninja." Seeing that Fujin wasn't saying anything, Hiruzen said farewell and left. Fujin returned to his house as well. There wasn't much for him to do. Instead, his mind began thinking about Kekkei Genkai. Fujin had been thinking about creating a Kekkei Genkai for a long time. As he grew increasingly stronger, he no longer felt a very strong desire towards them. However, it was still something he would love to have. Getting access to kids who knew these Kekkei Genkai was a good opportunity for him. He analyzed Scorch Release, Storm Release, and Ice Release. It's a shame that my talent in water manipulation is too low. Both Ice and Storm Release require water manipulation. Even though I have great control over wind and lightning, These two will be extremely difficult to create, though I still have some hope towards the Storm release. On the contrary, Scorch release fits me perfectly. My talent in wind manipulation is exceptional, while my fire manipulation ain't bad either. What's more, it is also one of the simpler Kekkei Genkai. When he was studying about Kekkei Genkai, Fujin had categorized them according to their complexity and how easy or difficult they would be for a normal ninja to master. The first category was the simple Kekkei Genkai. Fujin had put Scorch, Storm, Lava, and Steam release. All these Kekkei Genkai were very straightforward. In fact, Fujin already had a small degree of success in two of these Kekkei Genkai. Scorch release just involved using fire and winds to amplify each other. Considering how compatible the two elements were, Fujin felt that it was probably the easiest Kekkei Genkai. Fujin could heat up winds within his wind domain using fire. Even without wind domain, he could create wind explosion spheres that were made of extremely hot winds. It was his attempt at copying Pakura's technique. Unfortunately, he fell short in a very important aspect. On the other hand, steam and lava release worked by using fire to evaporate the water and melt the rocks respectively. As for storm release, it involved manipulating lightning like it was water. With his control and with the help of the blade of the thunder spirit, Fujin could control his lightning to an extent, though it wasn't as flexible as what Darui could achieve. The second category had the slightly more sophisticated Kekkei Genkai. It included ice, explosion, wood, and magnet release. Fujin understood the basic concepts of these Kekkei Genkai and knew their properties. However, what he couldn't understand was how exactly the elements would mix to create the Kekkei Genkai. For instance, ice release was a combination of water and wind. However, unlike lava release, where he could clearly explain the functions and interactions of the two elements, Fujin couldn't understand how exactly water and wind would need to interact to create ice. Similarly, it was difficult to calculate how wind and earth together could replicate the magnetic effect, or how water and earth together could create wood. How earth and lightning, two very incompatible elements, worked together to create explosion release was also something he couldn't figure out. For these reasons, Fujin considered these four Kekkei Genkai as more sophisticated, as he had no idea how to begin working on them. While he did have some help in studying ice release due to that book, all it did was help Fujin eliminate some guesses, as none of the methods mentioned in the book ever worked. Chapter 556, Categorizing Kekkei Genkai 2. The third category had the Kekkei Genkai, which seemed even more complicated and somehow had an effect on the user's body, increasing their difficulty level exponentially. Fujin included swift release, steel release, and dark release in this category. For Fujin, whose highest talents were in wind and lightning manipulation, swift release should have been the easiest Kekkei Genkai to learn. However, unlike the scorch release where Fujin had limited success, he didn't make any progress whatsoever towards swift release. Fujin could use wind as well as lightning to increase his speed. Despite that fact, he didn't even manage to conceptualize how to merge those two elements and create swift release. It was the same for steel release and dark release. Unlike the swift release, Fujin didn't even know which elements were involved in creating those two Kekkei Genkai. The Konoha library wasn't much help either. Fujin did have his own estimates, but he wasn't sure. The fourth category included the Kekkei Genkai, which were impossible to replicate by anyone without the bloodline. Those included all the Sharingan and its forms, Byakugan and its forms, Ketsuryugan, and Shiketsumiyaku. There was no way for Fujin to learn or create these Kekkei Genkai. He could still use the Daojutsus by stealing and transplanting the eyes, but he didn't see any way to replicate Shiketsumiyaku. In addition to these four categories, there were still a few more Kekkei Genkai about which Fujin didn't have any clear information. In fact, most of the ninja world didn't have much information about it due to how rarely they appeared. They included typhoon release, mud release, Ranmaru's Kekkei Genkai, Jugo's Kekkei Genkai, Sakan and Yukon's Kekkei Genkai, Kurama clan's Kekkei Genkai, Crystal Release, and perhaps a few others. Some of these were relatively easier. For instance, Mud Release could have been placed in the first category if there was more information on it, as it was very easy to explain how to create mud by combining water and earth release. Typhoon Release would have been easier as well if Fujin knew which elements merged to form it. Fujin speculated that it was a combination of wind and yang release, but wasn't sure. In addition, the effects of Typhoon Release didn't seem too different from wind release. Fujin could already replicate its effects with his normal wind release. Crystal Release would have possibly been in the second category if Fujin knew which elements were involved. By comparison, Ranmaru's Kekkei Genkai and Sakan and Yukon's Kekkei Genkai were much more complicated. Fujin would place them somewhere between the third and fourth categories if he knew more about them. On the other hand, Jugo's Kekkei Genkai and Kurama clan's Kekkei Genkai were strange. Kurama clan's Kekkei Genkai was an extreme stage of genjutsu. Though extremely unlikely, Fujin felt that even a normal ninja who was extremely talented in genjutsu could eventually reach that stage without needing the bloodline. Similarly, Jugo's Kekkei Genkai was just an inferior form of senjutsu. Anyone who learnt senjutsu would be able to exceed them, so Fujin wasn't sure whether it would be appropriate to call them Kekkei Genkai. Fujin thought, even though I can merge fire and wind to an extent, I can only do so out of my body. It is more of a combination jutsu rather than a Kekkei Genkai, even though I can replicate some features. A true Kekkei Genkai should merge the elements even before they are released from the body. Though it seems the same, doing so will cause a qualitative change. After all, lava release users directly spit out lava from their mouths instead of first melting rocks and creating lava from it. If they had to do the latter, then they would be a laughing stock in the ninja world instead of being a terror for weaker ninjas. Unfortunately, no matter how much I thought, I couldn't get that merger to happen inside my body. Luckily, I now can observe someone who can use the Scorch Release. It might just be what I needed for a breakthrough in this aspect. A smile appeared on Fujin's face. He muttered, I need to meet those kids tomorrow. Let me see what those Kekkei Genkai look like from a close distance. The next day, Fujin woke up early as usual and completed his morning training routine. He decided to not train spirit transformation jutsu that day. Instead, he created a few dozen clones who continued working on the Fuin battlefield. Meanwhile, he walked towards the training facilities where the Anbu were training the kids and silently observed everyone. A few people saw him, but no one disturbed him. For the next half an hour, Fujin just observed them. A peculiar expression appeared on his face as he realized, they aren't as emotionless as I expected them to be. Or rather, many of them are just pretending to act like they are emotionless without actually being emotionless. In fact, they even have friends. Did Danzo grow soft? Fujin didn't need to think to know what the answer to that question was. He thought for a bit and soon realized what he was missing. I nearly forgot about it. During the initial phase, Danzo promotes friendship between the root trainees. Only after they kill their best friend would they be considered emotionless enough to be able to become a full-fledged root ninja. Since this step wasn't completed, these kids aren't completely emotionless. Of course, they aren't completely normal either. However, that should be the result of a messed-up childhood along with spending a year or more in the root. As for why they are pretending to be emotionless, that should be Root's teachings plus them trying to follow the examples of Root's instructors. I should sponsor some therapists and maybe create a business from that. There is little doubt that it'll be one of the most lucrative businesses in this bloody world, though I guess it'll quickly be hijacked and used to increase brainwashing. Anyway, this is rather good news. Since Root didn't completely break them, these kids should recover in time. It'll also make it easier for Naruto to influence them. I need my prankster ninja army soon to ease my boredom. Fujin suddenly flickered and appeared behind an Anbu captain who was in charge of training the kids who had Kekkei Genkai. The startled Anbu captain, wearing a monkey mask, quickly turned around only to hear, "I'll take over these kids for now." Seeing Fujin standing behind him, he nodded and moved away. The 5 kids looked at Fujin curiously. Though Hiruzen had informed them about Fujin several times and introduced him last night, they had never interacted with him. They all were curious about the person the Hokage spoke so highly about. Fujin looked at them as well. Among the 5 kids, 2 were girls and the remaining 3 were boys. Their ages were in the 7 to 10 years range. Seeing them observing him, Fujin asked with a chuckle, "So, will you guys introduce yourself, or should I guess your names?" Hearing Fujin's questions, the kids immediately began introducing themselves. "I am Hikari," said a 9-year-old girl with long, flowing black hair. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and she wore a cheerful smile while introducing herself. "I am Takeshi," said a 9-year-old boy with messy blonde hair and sun-tanned skin. "I am Takeshi," said a 9-year-old boy with messy blonde hair and sun-tanned skin, radiating a calm demeanor, his blue eyes reflecting a sense of maturity beyond his years. "I am Yuji," said a 9-year-old boy with spiky white hair and dark skin. He exuded boundless energy as he constantly fidgets, his eyes gleaming with a mischievous glint. "I am Shoma," said a 7-year-old boy who looked reserved and shy. He had sleek black hair, and his fair skin hid beneath his quiet demeanor. "I am Sayaka," said a 10-year-old girl who looked confident and prideful. She boasted shoulder-length black hair that framed her determined face, and her fair skin complemented her assertive personality. Fujin heard their names and thought, none of them mentioned their family names. I guess Hiruzen instructed them to do so to avoid attracting obvious suspicions. Oh well, Fujin smiled and said, "Good names. Lord Hokage spoke quite fondly of you 5. Follow me. I'll see what you have learnt so far." Fujin turned around and began walking outside as the kids followed him with curiosity. They also attracted the attention of other kids. Seeing that Fujin was leaving the training facility, the monkey-masked Anbu captain flickered next to him. He had heard what Fujin had said and became worried that Fujin might accidentally expose their abilities. He said softly, "Lord Hokage advised against letting them fight in the open." Fujin nodded and said, "I know, don't worry." Fujin led the 5 kids out and entered the training ground opposite his house. Fujin had long placed seals throughout the training ground, so there was no worry about anyone other than Hiruzen spying. In addition, since he became a council member, others stopped moving through that training ground as well. The only one who would frequently visit the training ground was Naruto. However, Naruto was being put through the grinder by Kakashi. Kakashi gave his energetic students no break and put them through training of similar intensity for the second day as well. Despite their bodies being extremely sore and aching everywhere, the 3 genins dragged their feet afraid of the fearsome 1,000 years of death jutsu. So, there wasn't any chance of anyone intruding on the training ground unless Hiruzen sent a messenger. Fujin stood opposite the 5 kids and said, "Come at me with all you got. Don't hide anything, including your Kekkei Genkai." Chapter 557, Displaying Kekkei Genkai. "Come at me with all you got. Don't hide anything, including your Kekkei Genkai." The eyes of the 5 kids widened slightly. They were under strict orders from Hokage to not expose their Kekkei Genkai to anyone except their trainers. They weren't sure if Fujin knew about it or not. To their surprise, he did. Being the oldest among the 5 and being the unofficial leader, Sayaka said, "Lord Hokage told us to never expose our Kekkei Genkai. If we use it here, others might see." Fujin replied, "It's fine. You can use them when I allow you to use them. No one will see it here when I am with you. Of course, you shouldn't use it if there is someone else along with us here, but it's fine for now." "Any more questions?" The 5 kids shook their heads. Fujin said, "Good. Come at me with the intention to kill. We start now." As soon as they heard Fujin shout now, all five grabbed shurikens and threw at Fujin in one smooth action without any hesitation. Unlike the normal academy students and newly graduated genins, they didn't have any qualms about trying to kill. Fujin's right eye twitched at that sight as he muttered to himself. The time they spent in the route wasn't entirely wasted. The shurikens ripped through Fujin, or rather his after-image which dispersed moments later. Instead, they saw him standing a few steps to his right. However, all the five kids had expected it. While they didn't know exactly how strong Fujin was, all of them knew that he was one of the few elite jounins in Konoha. Though they weren't sure how strong elite jounins were either, they knew that he would at least be stronger than their teachers. Even before the shurikens reached Fujin, four of them had grabbed their tanto, and all five of them rushed towards Fujin. Sayaka was taking the lead. Just behind her were Yuji, Takeshi, and Hikari, who were moving together. Shoma was moving behind them. He was the only one not holding a tanto. Instead, he weaved hand seals which Fujin identified at a glance. Sayaka reached Fujin and stabbed her tanto towards his heart. However, a sword appeared in Fujin's hand and blocked the tanto. Sayaka was about to follow up with a few kicks, but her eyes widened as she was suddenly flung backwards by a few dozen meters as Fujin swung his blade. She thought in disbelief, what strength! Fujin didn't have any time to check on her as the next wave of assault reached him. Yuji attacked Fujin's neck, Takeshi attacked his legs while Hikari moved around Fujin and tried to stab him in his back. Fujin was impressed by their teamwork. He thought, not bad. At least in terms of formations and teamwork, they are far ahead of the academy kids. Even among genins, very few would match them. That said, this isn't exactly what I wanted to see. Fujin stepped a few steps backwards, creating distance between him and the two boys, and not letting Hikari move behind him. He used his sword to divert her tanto and slapped her away with the flat side of his sword. In one smooth motion, he changed the direction of his sword and swung it at Yuji, who had jumped in the air. In a panic, Yuji stopped his attack and tried to defend himself. Though he saved himself, he was sent flying just like Sayaka. Despite sending Yuji flying, his sword continued its fluid motion and hit Takeshi's tanto, knocking it out of his hand. A moment later, a kick landed on Takeshi's abdomen, sending him flying for a few meters as well. At the same time, chakra began flowing through his sword. Wind release, air bullet jutsu from a very close distance. Shoma shot 4 air bullets at Fujin. To Shoma's surprise, Fujin's blade cut through the air bullets and dispersed them. He questioned in disbelief, air bullets can be cut with a sword. Suddenly, Fujin disappeared and appeared right in front of him. Shoma heard, I guess it'll be unfair to the others if you are the only one who isn't sent flying. Sorry, kiddo. Before he could react, Fujin flicked his forehead, sending Shoma flying just like the others. The entire exchange was extremely quick. From the time Fujin sent Sayaka flying until he sent Shoma flying, not even a couple of seconds had passed. In fact, Sayaka landed on the ground after Shoma was sent flying. Fujin analyzed, they lack in power. But that's understandable considering their young age and the relatively low training time. After all, it should have been just over a year since Danzo began training them. He did a damn good job for sure. Though they are lacking in power, their speed is decent. More importantly, they attacked me in a very tactical manner. A normal Chunin would have likely not survived unless he retreated immediately. While Fujin was analyzing them, the 5 kids got back to their feet. Though Fujin had sent them flying, none were injured as Fujin didn't intend to injure them. At most, there were some stinging sensations. Even so, all were shocked at how easily they were sent flying. Sayaka thought, even our instructors struggle a bit against this formation. How did he stop it so easily? Is this how strong an elite jounin is? Fujin could see the disbelief on the faces of the 5 kids. He smirked and taunted, Is that all you can do? I have to admit, I expected more from you kids considering how impressed Lord Hawkage was with you guys. But so far, I am disappointed. Fujin's taunt immediately had the intended effect. All 5 kids were riled up. While root ninjas generally had very good control over their emotions, these kids were trained for just a year and didn't have the same control as the veterans in root. Sayaka weaved a hand seal while cursing, "This arrogant asshole." Ice release. Ice sword jutsu, 2 swords made of ice formed in her hands. She shouted, "Attack formation 3," and rushed towards Fujin. The others got into action as well. Fujin had sent everyone flying in different directions, which helped them use their formation. Yuji and Takeshi weaved hand signs while getting in position. Meanwhile, Shoma and Hikari moved farther away from Fujin in opposite directions. Fujin noticed their movements, but his mind was more focused on observing the ice sword as he thought. Finally, some Kekkei Genkai. He raised his sword to block the ice swords when he noticed small spikes forming on the ice swords. Ice release. Ice petals jutsu. When she was a few meters away from Fujin, Sayaka swung her ice swords in his direction. Immediately, around a dozen ice darts were launched towards Fujin. Fujin instantly flickered a few meters away, dodging the ice darts. Despite dodging by a comfortable distance, Fujin felt a cold breeze due to how cold the ice darts were. He analyzed, "Impressive. If I had defended using iron skin jutsu, even though darts wouldn't have pierced my body, the cold itself would have damaged my body to an extent." Fujin's eyes turned from Sayaka to Yuji as Yuji fired a bolt of lightning at Fujin. Fujin flickered again, but the bolt of lightning took a hard right turn and followed to his new location, forcing him to flicker again. A grin appeared on Yuji's face as he thought, "You can't escape from my lightning. No one can move as fast as lightning. I'll chase you until it hits you." Meanwhile, Fujin analyzed, "So, this is the storm release. I did see Darui use it, but our fight was very brief. Though Yuji's power in the lightning isn't very impressive, his control is very good. Even my control over lightning is nowhere near as good as his." Fujin continued flickering. The smirks that had formed on the faces of the kids faded away. A frown formed on Sayaka's face as she wondered, "I am supposed to assist Yuji with ice petals. But how can I do so when I can't even follow his movements? We need to send him close to Takeshi." Yuji was stumped as well. He thought, "Even though no one can move as fast as lightning, I can't follow his movements. He flickers right when I change the direction of my lightning bolt. I won't be able to hit him at this rate." Similarly, Shoma and Hikari were serious as well. According to their tactic, they would follow up if the initial attack failed. However, they couldn't even follow Fujin's movements. Even so, the kids didn't give up. Yuji continued attacking Fujin while Sayaka launched a few rounds of ice petals by estimating Fujin's location. After dodging a few times, Fujin understood their intentions and thought, "They want to divert me towards Takeshi. Let's see what they are planning." Since they were unable to divert him towards Takeshi, Fujin himself went towards him. As soon as Takeshi saw Fujin coming close, he grasped his chance. Scorch release. Extremely steaming murder jutsu chapter 558, Should I train them? As soon as Fujin stepped close to Takeshi, one flaming orb formed in his hand. He threw it at Fujin. Fujin immediately felt an intense heat. At the same time, Sayaka launched another round of ice petals, and Yuji diverted the lightning bolt towards Fujin once again. Fujin nonchalantly observed the 3 attacks while analyzing, so the other 2 have ice Kekkei Genkai. Can they perform ice release jutsus as well, or can only that girl do so? Fujin's entire body suddenly became black as he used the iron skin jutsu. The flaming orb hit Fujin. He felt an intense heat from the orb. The grass and trees in the vicinity caught fire. Moments later, the lightning bolt hit him. Having an advantage over the earth release, it pierced through the iron skin and hit him. A second later, a few ice darts hit his back and pierced into it as his iron skin jutsu was weakened due to the lightning bolt. The 5 kids were surprised. Takeshi, who was the closest, wondered, "How did we manage to hit him? Also, why isn't he showing any pain on his face? Shouldn't he be getting burnt and frozen at the same time?" He received the answer quickly as Fujin disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Immediately they thought, A shadow clone. When did he switch with a clone? Was it when he was moving rapidly? They immediately looked around but saw no sign of Fujin. Hiding among the trees, Fujin saw the 5 kids and analyzed him. Not bad. Not bad at all. The iron skin jutsu isn't very effective against Kekkei Genkai. Though it can normally resist a fire-wind combination jutsu, my clone felt a burning sensation from inside his body. If it was my actual body, my insides would have probably been cooked. Similarly, though it could have blocked the ice darts, it couldn't keep out the cold that my clone felt due to the ice. It would make movement difficult. Though their advantage isn't as broken as Naruto's, having a Kekkei Genkai is still a massive boost for any ninja. They'll have it much easier to become an elite jounin, and will have an advantage over other elite jounins due to the Kekkei Genkai alone. That said, Rank S is a whole different game. It's tough to say whether they would reach that level. Anyway, let me see whether they can do anything else. The 5 kids had gathered together since they couldn't find Fujin. Shoma was standing in the center with his eyes closed while the other 4 were standing with their backs to him and looking in every direction. Shoma muttered, "I can't sense him at all. It's as if he isn't in this training ground at all." Yuji replied, "Why would he leave us here and escape? He might be hiding. Keep sensing. You might sense him when he makes a move." Sayaka added, "He's right. Keep looking, Shoma. He might be staying just outside the range of your chakra field. Others be prepared to fight when he appear." Before she could complete her sentence, all 5 felt something and looked towards the ground. Their eyes widened as they saw 2 hands popping out of the ground. They grabbed Yuji and Shoma's legs. Earth release, headhunter jutsu, both Yuji and Shoma were forcefully dragged inside the ground, leaving only their heads above the ground. The other 3 jumped away instinctively as Fujin appeared right between them. Shoma looked shocked as he questioned, "How did he appear under me without me detecting him?" Fujin said, "Not bad, but is this all you can do?" Seeing him standing right in between them without any worry, Sayaka shouted, "Hikari, let's do it." Both Hikari and Sayaka weaved hand signs. Takeshi moved back while weaving hand signs as well. However, he was constrained as Fujin was standing next to Shoma and Yuji, who were buried helplessly. He couldn't use Scorch Release as they would be hit as well. Ice Release. Ice Mirror Jutsu. 2 ice mirrors formed simultaneously, one in front of Sayaka and another in front of Hikari. Both jumped into the ice mirror, causing some of Fujin's memories to resurface. He looked at the mirrors and thought, just 1 mirror each. Haku can create enough ice mirrors to form a dome to trap others. Still, this is a good start. There is no reason why they can't train to reach that level, though they will need to think of a way to prevent their enemies from escaping underground. Sayaka and Hikari looked at each other and nodded. An ice sword appeared in their right hand. At the same time, they exited the ice mirrors. In fact, they were jumping into each other's ice mirrors. More importantly, their speed was phenomenal. The 2 girls intended to slice Fujin with their swords while they were in between the jumps. Unfortunately for them, Fujin was quite aware of the capabilities of the Yuki clan. Right when the girls jumped from the mirrors, a massive amount of wind blasted from his back. It hit Hikari and slowed her before blasting her behind for 100 meters. At the same time, Fujin moved forward at a speed that was considerably superior to the 2 girls. Sayaka didn't even see him and directly felt a hand on her throat. She was grabbed mid-jump and slammed into the ground. The poor girl didn't even understand what had happened. She blanked out for a few seconds while wondering, what the hell happened? Who grabbed me in between my jump and slammed me to the ground? Less than a quarter of a second after Sayaka was slammed into the ground, Takeshi heard a voice behind him. "Are you planning on doing something or will you just spectate?" Takeshi was startled. He immediately tried moving away and turning back, but he felt 2 fingers jab into the back of his neck as Fujin said in a monotonous tone, "Too slow, you are already dead." The way Fujin said it scared Takeshi. As he felt the pain in his neck, he thought for a moment that Fujin was trying to kill him and immediately held that spot. Only after a couple of seconds, he realized that Fujin only meant it figuratively. Seeing his reaction, Fujin chuckled and said, "That's plenty for today. Help your friends out and come and see me together." Takeshi nodded and went to help others. Sayaka and Hikari were fine and were just stunned due to the sudden change, while Shoma and Yuji were stuck in the ground. Fujin observed them while thinking, their talents are definitely very high. Little wonder considering that all of them have awakened their respective Kekkei Genkai. They are already stronger than a typical genin. They could be considered as low chunin level, though they could win against stronger chunins if they can surprise them with their Kekkei Genkai. Considering their age, this is very good. If I train them properly, most of them will reach the elite jounin level, or at least close to it, in 3 years. The only one doubtful is Shoma, as he is much younger than the rest. Regardless, by the time of the Fourth Great Ninja War, there will be at least 4 elite jounins among them. Though very unlikely, even a rank S ninja can appear. The important question is, should I train them? Fujin was in a dilemma. Accepting students was a huge task and needed a lot of time. It was one of the main reasons why he refused to become a Jounin sensei when Hiruzen asked him. He just didn't have the time to watch after genins. However, it was different with these kids. They weren't genins. He didn't need to take them to do missions. Fujin could train them as he wished and could delegate the training to his clone while he continued his own training. In addition, he could make use of the Anbu Hiruzen had sent to take care of the boring or time-consuming training sessions. So, it wouldn't take a significant amount of his time. The only question was whether he would benefit by taking them under his wings and how much. Fujin kept thinking while Takeshi and the rest dug out Yuji and Shoma. After a couple of minutes, he sighed and thought, I had decided against getting into political conflicts after getting a seat on the council, as there isn't much benefit to gain in a short time. However, I have a feeling that I will be dragged into some political battles irrespective of whether I want to or not. Chapter 559, Fujin's First Official Students. Fujin recalled, Danzo already tried to drag me into a political battle once. Fortunately, I could make him pay dearly. It also allowed me to make the clan leaders owe me one. That said, I can't take all the credit, as there is one big factor that has given me an unfair advantage. That factor is Hiruzen. Even though he didn't do anything on the surface, Hiruzen completely supports me right now. He was the one to add me to the council, and also the one to generally support my ideas even if they aren't implemented yet. Even if he doesn't say anything, there is little doubt that every council member can see that he backs me. It is the main reason why Danzo didn't go overboard and no one else is bothering me. It is also the main reason why no one else has tried to make a move against my seat or tried giving me a headache. However, if Hiruzen dies and Tsunade replaces him, then I won't have that protection. Once that happens, I'll be dragged into politics slowly, one step at a time. With time, it'll only become intense. Granted that I could just take a step back as I don't have much to gain politically, but that will create a situation where others think that I am easy to push around. Not something that I want to see, as it'll just keep increasing my troubles until I decide to push back. The only way to deal with it would be to make the one who makes the first move pay dearly, just like Danzo. However, I can't rely on brute strength every time. After all, why would anyone engage against me in an actual fight when they know how strong I am? They will use schemes that don't involve fighting. If I use the Akuro identity again to flip the chessboard, then everyone will inevitably begin suspecting me even if they don't have any proof. After all, they aren't stupid, and Danzo will connect the dots as well. So I will have to do a political counterattack. But to do that, I'll need more influence in the village. And I need to start increasing it while Hiruzen is still alive, so that I don't face heavy opposition while I try to do so. Fujin's eyes wandered on the 5 kids. He thought, since Hiruzen has given me such a gift, then I might as well take complete advantage of it. I guess the reason why he put these kids under me is the same as well. He probably realized that I wouldn't have enough influence in the future once he gave up his hat or kicked the bucket, and hence, he decided to take advantage of the Danzo's situation to strengthen my influence. The 5 kids finally began walking towards Fujin. All of them were covered in dust and soil. Fujin finally made up his mind, all right, I will accept these 5 as my students. I'll also increase my influence over the other orphans. They can all believe in the will of fire as much as they want. However, as long as the village isn't at risk, they have to take my side and support me. Of course, this won't be enough. After all, it'll take years for these kids to mature. I'll need to increase my influence among Konoha's ninjas as well. Fortunately, I have just the thing to do so. The 5 kids finally reached Fujin and stood in front of him. To Fujin's surprise, there weren't any complaints in their eyes despite Fujin defeating them in such a manner. Instead, there was some admiration and respect as they understood how strong Fujin was to defeat them so comprehensively. He quickly realized, looks like having a terrible background followed by training and he quickly realized, looks like having a terrible background followed by training in root and brainwashing with will of fire diminishes one's sense of unfairness. It's sort of the same as Naruto, Fujin said. Not bad. I can see why Lord Hawkage spoke highly about you 5. That said, there is still a lot of room for improvement. I am sure our fight made you realize that. The 5 kids nodded. Due to having Kekkei Genkai, they were always given priority in training. They also had a few attack formations which could keep a Jounin on his toes. However, getting wrecked by Fujin made them understand that they still had a very long way ahead. Fujin said, I already saw some of your skills during the fight. Tell me which other techniques and jutsus you know. If you have some special skills, tell me those as well. Since Fujin was the one who would be responsible for them from here onwards, the 5 of them informed him about their abilities. They were pretty much in line with what Fujin had predicted. Fujin asked them several questions to get a better understanding of their abilities. His questions made them think a lot as well. The youngest, Shoma, was a censor. Though he could create ice, he couldn't perform any ice release jutsus. However, he could use some wind and water release jutsus. Similarly, Sayaka and Hikari could use some wind and water release jutsus as well. Both could create ice swords and one ice mirror. Sayaka could also use the ice petals jutsu, which allowed her to fire ice darts from the ice sword or even without it. Hikari was still training that jutsu. Takeshi could create just the flaming orbs with scorch release. If someone got hit by it, the flaming orb would burn their skin and evaporate all the water inside their body, burning them inside out. In addition, he knew some fire and wind release jutsus. Quite similar to Takeshi, Yuji could only control one lightning bolt with storm release. He was working on increasing the number of lightning bolts he could control. In addition, he knew some lightning and water jutsus. In addition, all 5 kids knew the body flicker jutsu, though none of them could do so without using hand seals. They knew the 3 basic jutsus from the academy. They were decent with shurikens and kunai and could also use the tanto effectively. Despite their individual strengths, both Danzo and Hiruzen seemed to have given more importance to operating together. Due to that reason, they had a few more good formations and very good teamwork. Fujin thought for a bit before muttering, your basics are good, but you guys are lacking in some aspects. He pretended to think very deeply. Seeing his serious expression, the 5 kids didn't disturb him. Instead, they just wondered where they were lacking. Suddenly, Fujin looked into their eyes and asked, do the 5 of you want to be my students? I have a feeling that you can become much stronger than what you can think about. The sudden question surprised the 5 kids. Neither of them had expected Fujin to suddenly say something like that. One moment he was discussing their abilities and pointing out their shortcomings, and the next moment he asked whether they wanted to be his students. The 5 of them exchanged glances. Even though they were initially in the route under Danzo and later looked after by Hiruzen, neither Danzo nor Hiruzen had trained the kids themselves. The ones who taught them were considerably weaker than Fujin. Not to mention, Fujin was already pointing out the inefficiencies in their training which made them think further. That said, their minds weren't thinking entirely logically. There was an emotional aspect as well. Not too long ago, they were living an extremely difficult life in the war-torn land of water. 3 of them were orphans and had to fend off the scary world by themselves. The remaining 2 were living in extreme poverty despite having parents, and they still remember the deaths of their parents. Of course, they were unaware that Root was behind the death of their parents instead of Kirigakure, whom they blamed. However, that memory was still fresh in their minds. Even though they found a new home in Root, which treated them well, and later found a grandfather-like figure in Hiruzen, it was the first time someone had tried to create a personal relationship with them. Unlike Danzo, who categorically stated that they would become Root ninjas in the future, and Hiruzen, who said that they would join the Anbu in the future, Fujin didn't put any conditions or mention any expectations with his offer. Instead, he only specified that he could make them much stronger. While their young minds weren't able to process this difference, they somehow instinctively felt it. As a result, the emotional impact of his words on them was far greater than Fujin had thought of. So, be it emotionally or intellectually, accepting Fujin's offer made the most sense to them. Looking at each other, they nodded. In one voice, they answered while bowing slightly, "We will be honored to be your students." A smile formed on Fujin's face. He replied, "Good. Chapter 560, This World Still Has Some Kindness." A smile formed on Fujin's face as he just got 5 students who had a Kekkei Genkai. Fujin couldn't help but think, until a little while ago, I didn't have contact with anyone who had a Kekkei Genkai other than Sharingan or Byakugan. And out of the blue, I now have 6 subordinates who have Kekkei Genkai, giving me an invaluable opportunity to observe them from a close distance. Fujin sat down on the ground with his back against a tree and said, "Sit down and make yourself comfortable. Since I am your sensei, my first task for all of you is to tell me everything about yourselves. Tell me about your life before you entered Konoha. Tell me everything that happened after you entered Konoha. Tell me who all taught you, what they taught you, and when." The kids were surprised once again. Though Root rescued them and provided them with a new life, this was again the first time when someone showed interest in their past. On the contrary, both Root and Hiruzen just asked them to forget about their past and only focus on their future in Konoha. Fujin was the first one who showed interest in knowing who they were before they entered Konoha. As a result, they told him everything about their past. Fujin listened carefully without disturbing them. Undoubtedly, every one of them had a tragic backstory, and every one of them hated the Mizukage faction with passion. All their sufferings were rooted in the action the Mizukage faction took against Kekkei Genkai users. For the very same reason, they were also very grateful and loyal to Konoha. Telling their pasts to each other made them feel much closer as a team, and even made them feel closer to Fujin, even though Fujin didn't say anything about his past. After hearing everything, Fujin let out a long sigh. He said softly, "I never thought that all of you would have such a tragic past. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do to change the past. However, I can promise that no student of mine will suffer like you did. Always remember your past. Remember the pain and suffering you went through. Use that as fuel to train yourself. Become so strong that no one will even dare to look at you the same way those people did. Become so strong that, when you become parents, your children will never suffer the same fate." A smile appeared again on Fujin's face as he added, "And if there is something that you can't handle, always come to me." The kids were touched by Fujin's words. For once, Fujin's words were genuine. Though Fujin didn't have much of an emotional attachment to them, they would be his students. If others bullied them for no reason, it wouldn't look good. In addition, if someone wanted to mess with him, they could target the 5 of them because Fujin would be too strong for them to target. Not to mention, Fujin had been wanting a good fight for quite some time. He didn't mind using such opportunities to flex his muscles a bit, and create some chaos. Fujin got up and said, "Take today off, hang out with each other. No need to train today. Meet me here tomorrow at 6 in the morning. We will have our first training session." The five of them immediately became excited, completely oblivious to the hell that awaited them in the upcoming days. While Fujin didn't intend to be as sadistic as Kakashi or as relentless as Guy, his training schedule wouldn't lose in intensity to either of them. With time, it would only become more intense. Thankfully, his students all had pasts that he could use as fuel to ensure that they didn't run out of gas. After being dismissed, the kids returned to their rooms while Fujin stayed in the training ground. He raised his right hand and stretched his palm like he did while forming the Rasengan. Instead of Rasengan, winds began swirling in his palm, taking the shape of an orb. Soon after, the winds turned reddish. Fujin could feel the heat from them as some of the winds breezed past his body. The orb began taking a proper form. If Takeshi witnessed this scene, he would have been shocked. The flaming orb in Fujin's palm looked exactly like the extremely steaming murder jutsu. It was his Kekkei Genkai. Fujin threw the orb at a nearby tree and it instantly caught fire. Fujin's eyes began glowing as he concentrated chakra in them to observe the damage. After observing for a few seconds, a sigh escaped his lips. Winds suddenly began blowing around the tree at a high speed and doused the fire, ensuring that the tree could live on for some more time. Fujin analyzed, "It's not the same. My combination jutsu can only cause external harm. Despite infusing more chakra, it doesn't have the same intensity as the scorch release, which can directly cause the water inside the body to evaporate. I'll need to observe Takeshi properly for some time to get clues on how he does it instinctively. Perhaps then I might be able to copy it. Sigh, this is still very difficult." No wonder even the likes of Hiruzen, Orochimaru and Kakashi never managed to copy a Kekkei Genkai. After all of them are much more talented than me in ninjutsu. Fujin wasn't in the mood to keep trying without any hope of success. He began returning to his home while thinking about the other matter, that is, increasing his influence. Fujin thought, "It's time to increase my influence in Konoha." Normally, it would have been quite difficult to do so. Thankfully, I will have a couple of opportunities soon. There are two ways of increasing my influence. The first is by displaying my martial might. This is the path the Sanins, White Fang, Minato, and Kakashi took. All have top-notch battle credentials. They are the pillars that create belief in the hearts of Konoha ninjas that our village is strong. Though my record isn't bad either, I can't make my achievements public, unfortunately. So others aren't sure about my capabilities as they don't know which rumors to trust and which to ignore. Fortunately, Suna and Odo's attack will give me just the opportunity to do something in the light. That will establish my martial might, putting me at least at the same level as Kakashi in terms of reputation. The second way is by doing something that would benefit the ninjas in the village. One of the main reasons why Tsunade is so highly thought of in Konoha and throughout the ninja world is how much the medical ninjutsu in Konoha progressed due to her. For this reason, her influence in the village far exceeds that of Jiraiya. Had she been active inside the village, her influence might have been at the same level as Hiruzen. Hamura and Koharu have taken this path as well. After all, both are considerably behind Hiruzen and Danzo in terms of strength. However, they have an excellent reputation among the ninjas due to helping them out in one way or another. Of course, unlike Tsunade, they were able to achieve it due to decades of effort instead of brilliance in a particular field. Normally, this method would have been difficult for me to achieve. The changes to the Ninja Academy could have given me that, but that seems to have been stuck for now. Fortunately, someone handed me the perfect proposal to take care of this matter. Hehe. Fujin couldn't help but chuckle as he realized, when I entered this world, Fujin couldn't help but chuckle as he realized, when I entered this world, I was always very cautious and even fearful of Danzo. Once I became strong, I even took several steps to reduce his influence. However, I seem to have misjudged him. He is so kind and benevolent, just like Hiruzen. I wonder which one of them is more benevolent. Fujin humored himself and actually thought of the answer. After a few seconds he concluded, no, Hiruzen is far more benevolent. He did teach me the wind vacuum technique, provided a few thousand elemental crystals, got me on the council, gave me scrolls of flying thunder god and spirit transformation jutsu, and even taught me fire and earth jutsus along with other assistants that I keep asking him regularly. Danzo, though very generous, doesn't compare with that. He only helped me improve my wind vacuum technique, gave me over 100 talented subordinates, and gave me a proposal that I could use to build my influence. Oh well, Danzo is the second most benevolent person then. He narrowly beats the Aim Jounin, who gifted me the Blade of the Thunder Spirit, and Sasori, who gifted me over 60 top-quality puppets. Sigh, I didn't know that so many people went out of their way to help me. I guess this world isn't entirely bad after all. Thankfully, Hiruzen, Danzo, and Sasori couldn't hear Fujin's thoughts. If they could, they would have forgotten about their differences and enmities and ganged up on Fujin.